the date? Good evening. Today is November 14th, Monday, and the monthly public safety meeting is now called to order. I will start by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, that is currently known as the city of West Hollywood, is the occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Gabrielino Tongva and Gabrielino Kritz people. Commissioner Berger, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Commission Secretary, can I get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Berger,
Here.
Commissioner Roman,
He stepped out.
Commissioner Steele,
Here.
Vice Chair Balbone,
Here.
Chair Hallman.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you, Commission Secretary. Approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
I would like to make a suggestion for the bathrooms, because we have a new set of city council members, and which will be new appointees likely, that we table that until the new people come on.
So are you referring, Commissioner Berger, to item 8D?
Yes.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
I know we were asked for feedback on this, but this is law now.
I can't hear your mic.
I know we were asked for feedback on this, but it is law. So are you saying that you want to wait to get the new feedback from new appointees?
Yeah, the discussion between us up here, because we're going to hear feedback from the community, and then the discussion with us, we're going to have likely new appointees here that are going to be serving with the new city council group.
Do we need to vote on this, Director Rivas?
Yeah, so good evening, Chair and Public Safety Commissioners. So the item is as directed by City Council proceeding in terms of outreach to various commissions and advisory boards. So if the commission wishes to place this item on hold into a future agenda, you're certainly welcome to do that. But just know that this item is going to be moving forward to the City Council in December. So if the Public Safety Commission wishes to discuss the item and provide input and feedback, now would be the appropriate time to do that. But it's certainly the will of the Commission if you choose to discuss it at a later date. But again, I just want to emphasize that it is going to be going before the City Council in terms of what the proposed ordinance is. And ultimately, the City Council will be making the final decision on the proposed ordinance.
Which council will be at that meeting? Will it be the new city council group?
To be honest with you, Commissioner Berger, I don't know if, I do know that it's going next month. So if it is placed on the agenda for the second meeting in December, then to answer your question, it will be the new city council that will be in place at that point. If it's December 5th, which is the first meeting, then you may have some of the existing council members there to provide input. But December 21st is our second meeting. So if it goes on that agenda item, which I'm assuming it is, but I don't know for sure. I can kind of verify during the meeting, but there will be a new city council at that time.
Also, commissioners, there's a possibility we may not meet in December because of another scheduled meeting in chambers. So I think if we're all in agreement, we should probably leave this on the agenda so we can at least discuss before the city council meeting, as Director Rivas has stated.
I guess personally, I don't think it would hurt, to hear us as even if we are residents, just residents and not on the commission as well. So I guess our feedback can't hurt.
Okay, so then we can move forward. So we're not going to make any changes to tonight's agenda, correct?
No.
Okay, great. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. Commission Secretary, can I please get a roll call?
Commissioner Berger,
Here.
Commissioner Roman,
Here.
Commissioner Steele,
Yes.
Vice Chair Balbone,
Yes.
Chair Hallman.
Yes.
The agenda is approved.
Thank you, Commission Secretary. Approval of the minutes. Are there any changes to tonight's or the minutes from our October 12th meeting? Vice Chair Balbone?
I did not have any changes.
Okay. We good? Commission Secretary, we don't have any changes, so can I get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Berger,
Here.
Commissioner Roman,
Here.
Commissioner Steele,
Yes.
Vice Chair Balbone,
Yes.
Chair Hallman.
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
Thank you, Commission Secretary. Moving on to item 6, public comments. Commission Secretary, do we have in-chamber public comments, and do we also have comments on Zoom?
Yes, we have 2 in chambers, and on Zoom, we'll check real quick. And we also have 2 on Zoom.
Okay. Are we ready to go on Zoom? Can we start with our Zoom comments? And
Yeah,
we'll do 3 minutes, Director Rivas.
You got it. Thanks, Chair. And so we'll start with the first number ending in 1642. If you could please press *6 to unmute yourself, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Again, last 4 digits of 1642. Okay, Chair, we'll come back to that caller if they wish to speak. So at this point, we will call on Yola Dore, ending in 5670. Yola, if you could please press *6 to unmute yourself, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello?
We can hear you, Yola. Yola, are you there?
Yes, yes. Good evening, Commissioner and honored guests. Yola Dore, West Hollywood. As you may know, excuse me, can you hear?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm your liaison from the Disabilities Advisory Board. And as such, I want to let you know this evening that I might miss some of your future meetings. So I hope you will keep me apprised as to what's going on in advance so that I can get assistance, as I will be having some surgery. On tonight's agenda is a matter that I'm very concerned about, and that is the gender-neutral bathrooms. The reason I'm concerned, and I'm speaking for myself, is the nightmares as it's proposed, meaning the architectural design for persons with disabilities, seniors, transgender folks, etc. Because if the door goes all the way to the floor, security wouldn't be able to tell if someone in that booth is in trouble. And if the outer realm of the bathrooms have a second outer door to prevent anyone calling out for help should they need it, someone in those restrooms could be in trouble, physically or otherwise. So until we reshape or remold the architectural designs of those bathrooms, I'm diametrically opposed as it's written. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yola. Again, we'll return back. I believe the individual was capable of unmuting themselves, again, with the phone number ending in 1642. If you could please press *6, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, Commissioner. My name is Kevin Barry. I'm a gay man with a disability who lives in West Hollywood. I'd like to also address the gender-neutral bathroom bill. Give you some background on this. In 1989, the Supreme Court held in Pricewaterhouse versus Hopkins that harassment directed at a person because that person does not conform to traditional sex stereotypes is covered by Title VII. 2020, peer-reviewed study published in Journal of Adolescent Health found that transgender and non-binary youth who experienced bathroom discrimination had more than 1.5 times the odds of attempting suicide in the past year compared to those who do not experience bathroom discrimination. Further, 43% of LGBT youth in California can never use bathroom locker room at school that matches their gender identity, and 58% do not feel comfortable doing so. West Hollywood has always been known as a safe haven for LGBTQ people. If we cannot offer basic fundamentals like a safe space to use the facilities, we fail the next generation. I urge you to make this a priority. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Chair, we have no other speakers at this time.
All right, Commission Secretary, can we move to speakers in chambers? Is our first speaker Danny Gonzalez,
Correct.
followed by Stephanie Harker.
Correct.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi there, everybody. Thank you so much for your time today. My name is Danny Gonzalez, and I'm a policy advocate and community organizer at the Los Angeles LGBT Center. Since 1969, the Los Angeles LGBT Center has cared for, championed, and celebrated LGBT individuals and families in Los Angeles and beyond. We are an unstoppable force in the fight against bigotry and the struggle to build a better world, a world in which LGBT people can be healthy, equal, and complete members of this society. Because of this, we are proud co-sponsors of SB 1194 and its support of gender-neutral restrooms. Opponents of public accommodation laws that include gender identity protections often claim that these laws have leave individuals vulnerable to attack in public restrooms. However, according to a study by UCLA's Williams Institute, there's actually no evidence that letting transgender people use facilities that align with their gender identity increase any safety risk. In fact, what we actually see is the opposite. According to the National Center of Transgender Equality, almost 60% of transgender Americans have avoided using public restrooms out of fear of confrontation. So the center stands firm in the belief that we should all be able to use the restrooms without fear of discrimination. This is why we continue to support the expansion of gender-neutral restrooms and applaud the City of West Hollywood for its commitment to equity and fair treatment of all members of the community. Thank you all so much for your time. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Stephanie Harker.
Good evening. Stephanie Harger, City of West Hollywood. This is the portion that's not on the agenda, correct? I mean, I'm hearing 8D comments. This is just public comment.
Correct.
Thank you. My public comment is, we're very excited, especially a lot of us on the east side, that tomorrow night, and I wanted to alert all of you because it does have a lot to do with public safety. The city is hosting an open house at Plummer Park in Fiesta Hall, and it will be tomorrow night, which is Tuesday, October 15th, from 5 to 7, and I'm happy to say there will be refreshments served. That usually brings them in. But they want input this time around. You may or may not know about the fight to protect Plummer Park. There was little to no significant public input. They're actually asking us for it this time. We're excited about that, but one of the things that comes to the forefront, as it did in the original plan, was safety. And we were told, rather in an erroneous fashion, that if you knocked down Great Hall, Long Hall, it would be safer. Well, that's not true. And our sheriff at the time, our Captain Kelly Frazier, said the only way to make a park safer, a public park safer, is boots on the ground. So we have done that with block by block and with security guards and so on. But I hope that all of you will come out and enjoy meeting with everyone, and particularly along the lines of safety for this commission. But for every other thing, they're looking at designs and what people would like to see happen in the park, and whether to retain the history of the park and the neighborhood feel of it, and definitely to retain all of the trees. Thank you.
Commission Secretary, I see we have one more public comment in chambers.
That's correct.
West
Yes.
Sigmiller.
Hi, everyone. My name is West. It's nice to see you all after such an intense political campaign season. I'm sure we're all relieved that that's over. So tonight, I'm here to invite all of you as public officials and members of the West Hollywood community, everyone at home, this message is for you, and everyone in chambers. The Free WeHo Coalition, in collaboration with Natural Health First, is hosting a community health forum on December 9th from 5 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. in Fiesta Hall in Plummer Park. It's going to be featuring a live debate with world-class health experts, and local community groups will be providing community resources. We'll also have a comedy show opening act and a public Q&A where the public can finally ask the questions that they can't ask anywhere else about really hot topics like vaccines, lockdowns, masks, and mandates and related public health measures. So just to put this in context, it's called WeHo Uncensored for a reason. The last 3 years has been a very interesting time for people trying to engage in conversation about these topics. And basically, as much as human nature can turn very, very bad when you strip that thin veneer of civilization away, it's also shown that we all can have hope for the future. Because oftentimes when crises are bad, when times are really tough, communities really do come together. And you often see the best come out of human beings. So remember, we're all in this together, whether we're vaxxed, boosted, or unvaxxed. Jews, Muslims, Christians, atheists, communists, Buddhists, Hindus, whatever your value system is. What is our common bond? It's freedom. Because without freedom, you can't be a Buddhist. You can't be Muslim or Jewish or a Christian. Without freedom, you can't drive from here to Oregon or open a donut shop. Without freedom, you can't be an American. Because that's what it's all about. And that's the only thing that it's all about. Nothing else, just freedom. We hope that we'll see you at the forum on December 9th from 5 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. You can find out more information at freeweho.com. Thank you.
Commission Secretary, do we have any additional comments?
We don't have any additional comments.
Okay, so moving on to commissioner comments. I'll just start by saying Commissioner Oliver is not with us tonight, and he is on a very long-needed holiday with his husband. So he sends his regards. Commissioners, does anyone have comments? Commissioner Steele?
Thank you, Chair. It's great to be back in chambers with all of you, and I look forward to another fun, robust meeting. I did just want to take a moment to wish Yola Dore well. I know I reached out to her directly with her upcoming surgeries, but I just wanted to wish her well, and we will hope to have her back and healthy with us, making comment as soon as possible. And then also thank you to Stephanie, for bringing that up. I've shared the Plummer Park information. I've invited some folks who have said previously that they were concerned and interested and wanted to be a little bit more invested. So I will try to be there, and I hope that we see a lot more community come out and speak. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Steele. Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Berger?
I would like to comment on the, well, no, I'll go ahead and move on. I'm good.
Okay. Vice Chair Balbone?
I have one comment. I have not attended many city events lately because I've been traveling a lot for work, but one event that I did attend that is WeHo adjacent that I want to shine a spotlight on for a reason is Models of Pride. It is my favorite LGBT center event. And anyone who does not know about this event, it's basically an event for LGBT youth and their parents, their allies, and their educators, and it provides resources and education that is much needed. It was virtual for the last couple of years, and this was the first time we were back in person. And when we think about how we engage here, and we think about how we engage with Block by Block, and how we engage with the sheriff and fire and anyone else who works in the city, I just really think strongly we should continue to partner with the LGBT Center. They have a treasure trove of resources, and it makes me proud the work they do in the community, particularly this event, because there are so many youth who are isolated. So if you haven't checked it out in the past, it was on the 22nd, but it's annual, and I really, really recommend it, and just share it with any educators that you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Sounds like an amazing event. Commissioner Roman, anything? Got nothing, all right. Well, the night is young. Unfinished business, item 8A, report from our fire captain. Also, commissioners, just a friendly reminder, we had all agreed that when we get our agency reports, we will try to keep our questions to 3 minutes, but we'll just self-police ourselves.
Well, good evening, and just wanted to thank the City of West Hollywood for all their support. Your fire family is doing wonderful, and I have the report for the month of October for West Hollywood. We totaled 610 runs, so that puts on average 20 runs a day within the City of West Hollywood between the two fire stations, so they are routinely busy. Nothing abnormal. As far as responses, as we see as we look into October, we had a total of 10 fires. We transported 320 patients, 104 which required advanced life support, and 216 which required basic life support. And we had 16 service calls and 123 good intent calls. One thing I'd like to mention is we did have 4 structure fires that I look at that see that had some significant potential, but by the quick actions of your fire department, they were contained rather quickly, but did have potential to extend. And as I talk every month, it's just one of the concerns that I have within the City of West Hollywood due to the population and density that we have. So I just want everybody, as we know, as we transition into winter, that we do routinely see an uptake nationally with fires due to heating or just different elements that happen because you're in the home longer because you have shorter daylight hours, and as your routine becomes different in the winter time as it does the summertime due to daylight hours and your activity at home. So just something to think about with as we transition into fall into winter. I'd like to also mention that the WeHo, the Halloween event from the fire side went really well. So appreciate the support and the augmented staffing that we did. We were in unified command with the Sheriff's Department, and we have a seamless operation when it comes to large-scale incidents and routine incidents. So I'd really like to thank the city for the pre-planning that we put in and the conversations that we have to have the most efficient workforce for the potential. And I know that sometimes it seems benign. It may be potentially some would mention maybe a heightened awareness for the staffing that we have, but it plays a role. So I like to look at it as you don't need auto insurance either until you get in an accident. So we try to be very prudent in what we do with our spending and our staffing. So we want to appreciate the great work and the conversations we have at the public safety side of the house with the city of West Hollywood. And is there anything for me?
Commissioners? Commissioner Berger?
How did the CERT training go?
People were happy with CERT. So I got positive feedback with CERT, so I feel that it went great, and we're going to look forward to seeing what the interest is with doing another training session for CERT.
It was full, right?
It is, so well, it was full when we started, so hopefully it ended up that way. So, yeah, we're happy with it. So we appreciate those that came out to be involved, because that's what we want is a community involvement, and CERT is all part of that.
Do we have another scheduled CERT training on the calendar?
Not as of yet, but we will coordinate that with Megan Courier and see what the need is. And so really we'd like to do it when we can have full attendance and participation. It's good. And actually when you have a full group of CERT trainees there, if you will, it actually brings people together really well rather than doing it for 3 to 5, you know, so you want a full house. There's a different bond when you have a larger group and interaction.
All right, yes, thank you. Keep us posted because regretfully I missed the last one just because of scheduling conflicts with work.
Oh, that work thing.
The work thing. Commissioners, any other questions?
I do have a question. There was a fire on Sherwood, and I haven't seen it come in our reports, and I asked just because there was some significant damage to the house, the home, and it just happens to be in a path that I walk regularly.
Okay.
And I'm curious, with that fire and then with the Coast Playhouse fire, any things that we're seeing, or are they still under investigation?
Still, most are under investigation. Some that we can determine, so I don't have any specific on the Sherwood, but I can get that for you, make sure that we do get that information for you. And the other one that you mentioned was, which one?
The Coast Playhouse fire.
Oh, the Coast Playhouse fire. So on the coast, I have that in my list here. The Coast Playhouse. Coast Playhouse, so yes, smoldering trash can, no spread to any structure, so that is still under investigation and probably is going to be ruled as undetermined because there wasn't any witnesses or anything that we saw gleaning as it being malicious, that's for sure.
Okay. So is the trash can inside or outside, because the theater's been closed for a while?
Right, so it had no extension of the rest of so it looks like fire was in the lobby area, Yeah, in the coastal playoffs. So it may have been somewhere, something that was probably some transient nature with people that are in there. So
Okay,
that's what it appears to be.
okay,
Since it's been vacant for quite some time. So it was,
okay, thank you.
you bet.
Commissioner Steele.
Thank you. I just had a couple of quick questions. I also missed the CERT, but I will try to be at the next one. I had a scheduling conflict as well. For the Halloween numbers, 2 questions. One, was there anything specific that was common in those calls?
It's hard to determine what common is because all of them are different. So I can't say that there was any common type of calls. I would have to go through all the data to look if there's anything out of the norm. But I can say that with the festivities that go on in West Hollywood, pretty much everything is the norm.
Yeah, okay. And then my second question, I was just trying to see if it was over intoxication or if there was a through line there for the medical calls on that.
I don't have the exact data on that. It just gives it in a generic form, but I didn't see anything that was really stood out as far as what routinely goes on in an active area for West Hollywood.
Okay, thanks. And then do we have year-over-year numbers for Halloween? I was just wondering if we're able to get those.
We are able to get those.
That'd be
so
great.
We've been doing this for a long time, so we can go through the data and look at it. And so if there's anything specific you like on call volume or how we set up, because remember also over the course of whether you look back 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, the way that we have run the incidents have worked differently from how we're doing any treatment on site. And so it could be a hard one to chase, but we can come up with any of the run totals so you see how it looks from year to year to look at if there's any way to do it any different or just for the fun data outreach on it. We could look at that for sure if you like.
Yeah, I think especially with the conversation around Halloween as it relates to the city and the business community and the nightlife community, what I'm interested in looking at is looking at those numbers based on the different forms of Halloween that we've done, just to see kind of what that looks like.
Understood. Okay.
Thank you. And then the other question I had was I thought the information about kind of going in to this season, and I smashed my glasses, so just forgive it, but was interested.
I'm over here.
Okay, exactly. So I'm just wondering, it's a question for staff. Do we do any messaging around that, like preventative messaging going into this time of year for fire safety for the community?
We actually do put out a number of press releases, but we really rely on our Los Angeles County Fire Department folks, partners, to provide us the information. We actually just had a flyer that came out from the county fire department that we pushed out. So we do typically put something out as it relates to, the windy conditions and the fire season, et cetera. So,
Yeah, I've seen that. I think it would be nice if comms could do something like just a quick social graphic that talks about, fire safety in the home, going into the holidays, and something that's a little more from the city to the community, if that's possible. And then that was it. Okay, that's
It's
it.
100% possible. We will work on formulating a message so we can get it out to the citizens of West Hollywood and those that are visiting or what have you. We can easily generate that. That'd be a great idea for us to do.
Thank you.
And I agree with Commissioner Steele, especially as people are lighting their pilots with their furnaces and older units, being a fire survivor, and that is something you never forget. You can just very easily forget to clean out the bottom before the pilot is lit, and that can cause an unfortunate circumstance. So if we can remind residents, it's very important to do that.
Correct, and there's also a couple other elements of that is, let's just say creative ways to heat your home. That there are some things that folks don't maybe identify besides wanting to stay warm and some of the consequence behind some of those alternative means of staying warm in your home. So those are some challenges as well. We'll work with Danny on getting some great messaging out to keep our people safe.
I think that'd be really helpful. And then maybe even if the chief wanted to come on one of the YouTube videos that the city does, that might be a fun way to do it. So just a suggestion, but thank you.
We can do that. Be happy to.
And thank you, Commissioner Steele. Commission Secretary, do we have any public comments or questions for our fire chief in chambers?
We have no speakers in chambers.
Okay.
I've got one more real quick comment.
Oh, good.
Just a quick comment. We talked about the locks on the dumpsters.
Dumpsters?
Whatever happened with that?
So Athens does already provide that in terms of that. So the folks do need to request that individually, but it's not something that staff is proactively
I thought that we
at.
wanted to make it a requirement for all dumpsters in West Hollywood to have those locks on, to have the locks on them.
So, but unfortunately, it's not the Public Safety Commission's purview to make requirements, because that would be something that we would have to do as a result of a code amendment in our city's municipal code. So that's not something that we would require of businesses. However, we could look into, any business or residential property that is experiencing concerns, no differently than the process that we have currently in place. They can reach out to us, or we can offer that to them and go through that process.
Can we put together something, because there's a few of these things, and it's going to probably be our new commissioners when they come in, to make some recommendations to council for such things like that. Bullet points, we've got several of those.
Well, do we need to agendize this?
It's probably going to be our new commissioners when they come in for who's going to be setting the next agendas. We got our December one, and then the January is going to be a whole new possibly group here.
So then maybe we should table this and agendize it at a different time.
Yeah, it
when
can
we
be on
are a new full body.
Mm-hmm.
Is everyone in agreement?
Yeah, I just had one thought, if I can, Chair. I think another angle to do this, since we're talking about, residential would be the city, but then the business community, we could also just work with the chamber and ask them to send it to all their business partners and let them know that Athens provides it, how they can get it. There might be some easier ways to check some of the boxes before we go the full tilt push with residents or landlords. So,
Personally, I would like to see something very clear, a recommendation to council, and something measurable so we can see the effects of what happened with those things, because it feels like so many things just sort of slip through the cracks. I want something very distinct and measurable so we can see what happens with it. I would like to see our next group put this on their work plan and really discuss exactly what they want to have happen.
I mean, I think that's possible. I'm in agreement with that. Again, when we have our new commissioners seated. Any other commissioner comment?
I have one more.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Berger.
The CERT program, Chair Hallman and Commissioner Steele, 2 out of 5 up here, wished they could go to the CERT program sooner than whenever the next one's going to be. We have, and there's probably a lot of people in the audience like this, we have a cooperation with the city of LA, and maybe there's others, that allow our people from West Hollywood to go to their CERT program if they have extra seats that aren't taken by their people. I would like to see us look into that and make that very clear to our residents as well, and offer a reciprocal deal with them. Mm-hmm. And secondly, there's some really good programs with the fire guys in LA or whatever. They do these online trainings. I would like to see that so people here in West Hollywood can just get involved right away, because those already exist. And maybe you guys can coordinate with them. There's a couple of really good guys who have addressed some of the main things, but maybe there's something that we can do with our guys here to put some sort of presentations together if there's lacking of those two.
We do coordinate with the City of Los Angeles with their fire department on CERT. So just besides West Hollywood, they do border us in a lot of different areas. So we do work with LA City Fire Department quite a bit on that. So I know that we are both good partners on if there's training opportunities. So meaning that if they have a cert class that's coming up, they have 25 slots and they may have 5 that are loose, they will offer those to us or vice versa. We do that with professional firefighter series, training, cert. It's all, we work very closely with that organization. So that is already happening, that we do communicate and talk.
So staff, can you earmark that, something that we don't want to let go of, somehow make that, everybody know that? Maybe to go on our website, or our next group can discuss exactly how they want us, how that would look as well. But
Yeah, absolutely. And just so you know that although we did work with our Los Angeles County Fire Department partners in hosting a CERT at the request of community members, the commission, right, and even council, of making it more convenient for residents to attend here in the city of West Hollywood. It is actually open to pretty much anybody. So we did have just a handful, and probably less, of residents that live outside of the city that actually did participate in this CERT training, although the bulk and the majority were residents here of West Hollywood. But yes, certainly, we can certainly work with Chief and his staff to make sure that we get that information out there. But as I understand it, and Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, it's posted on the LA County Fire Department's website. It lists kind of different dates and different locations that the CERT program is available. And then folks, any member of any community essentially can register and RSVP and attend that training. So we did push it out as much as possible again here in West Hollywood to the residents, but we did get a couple of folks outside of the city, but sure.
Thank you, Director Rivas. Commissioners, any other questions for our fire chief? Well, thank you, sir. As always, it's great to see you.
Yeah, thank you for your support. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Please be safe.
Always.
Item 8B, report from our Sheriff's Department. Sergeant Yost, come on down.
Commissioners, for October 2022, Part 1 crime was down 2% with 186 incidents when compared to October of last year. Grand theft, petty theft, and other burglaries are the story for this month. We had 17 grand theft pickpockets, 4 grand theft phones, bags from establishment tabletops, 9 petty thefts of cell phones. On a positive note, there were 3 suspects arrested for pickpocketing in October. Other burglaries within the city, we saw a surge from a local burglar that was identified and linked to additional incidents that occurred in June and July. This suspect was arrested on Thursday, November 10th with the amazing work of our detective bureau. He was also linked to 11 other burglaries. There was an unusual high number of reported rapes in October. 2 victims believed they were drugged, and alcohol was a factor in all of these incidents. In terms of overall crime numbers, the last 3 months have been our lowest Part 1 crime totals of the year. Deputies have been working diligently, making great, impactful arrests. We had 1,748 calls for service. There were 67 felony arrests and 134 misdemeanor arrests. The West Side saw 50. Pardon me, these are Lieutenant Lapkin's notes, and I'm trying to read over them. I think West Side had 56%, leading the way with 94 Part 1 crimes. City Center was 19%, and East Side was 25%. Gateway had 2 grand thefts and 8 petty theft shoplifts in October. Target, Bevmo, and Best Buy seem to be the targets. Bevmo especially is getting hit repeatedly with shoplifting of tequila. Total grand theft, petty theft, vehicle burglaries accounted for 69% of all Part 1 crimes for October. The questions from September's meeting, Commissioner Steele, you asked about training for West Hollywood specifically, and you reached out with Lieutenant Lapkin and discussed that matter. How does our crime compare to other LASD stations and other agencies? We do not compare our crime stats with other agencies, including our own LASD, because each agency is different with population, location, and demographics. You can go to crimemapping.com. It's a great source of information to check local crime stats. We also report all of our crimes to the FBI, and you can check their website to get that information as well. You asked, can we break down calls for service by West, Mid, and East District? Our crime analyst is trying to figure out a way to do this. Our system is archaic, and it has like systems over the top of systems to band-aid it. So he's trying to figure out a way to make that work. Commissioner Roman, you asked something about the Nixle system being down. Nixle was having issues with their website. Apparently the problem has been resolved. You asked about our bikes. We did receive our bikes. They are being outfitted with Sheriff's Department graphics at the moment. So we do have those, and they'll be deployed shortly. Footbeats, we have asked the deputies to conduct footbeats and stop in and visit the local businesses. And we are continuing to try to fill these. However, we are very short on staff, and our staffing levels have been difficult to make these happen on a regular basis, but we are doing it as much as we can. Commissioner Hallman, you asked, can we get footbeats on Fountain and Santa Monica in the morning? And we have scheduled those, and they have been deployed. Commissioner Berger, you asked, how can we identify the trends? Our crime analyst looks for trends based on criminal reports taken. We also reach out to our local surrounding agencies and get their information to combine and put it all together to make crime trends. Is there anything else?
Commissioner Steele, did you have a question for Sergeant Yost?
How did you know, Chair? Thank you for all the updates and the information. Couple of questions. I'm going to go to the number of rapes first. When you say that alcohol was a factor, does that mean these are drink spiking related incidents?
I'm not sure, it's not in here, but I'm assuming basically when we say alcohol was a factor, when the report is documented, when they come and speak with them, they would ask them if they had been drinking or if there was alcohol involved, and they would say yes, so that would be the determining factor. I couldn't tell you if it was drug spiking or drink spiking.
Okay, well, I know they keep reports because we get the reports for those, so even if we don't have them now, can we get an updated drink spiking sexual assault report? Thank you. And then one of the things that came out of our nightlife safety debrief was talking with the clubs about when folks spill out to go to Mickey's for the after hours portion of the evening. Having more foot patrols there would be very helpful and I know we have the nightlife deputy, and I know we've done a little bit of increase there, but I just wanted to get an update and find out if we've been able to action that yet, or if that's even reached you yet, because I'm not sure if you were here for that debrief or that commentary.
I don't think I've asked EPT to increase their nighttime walks. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we've had any nighttime foot beats. I don't think we have, honestly.
Okay. All right. I've been told from the surrounding clubs and even Larry that owns Block Party, just about the traffic in that area and kind of what happens there, and that would be helpful to have some more folks or just even one person on beat. So just wanted to make sure that reached you, if that's something you can look at. And then I had another question that came in from community, and that was in the report for last month, there was somebody that was ticketed for riding a scooter on a highway, and I was wondering if we could get more information on that. Was that, when we say highway, was it Santa Monica? Was it Fountain? Can we get an update on that? And then I just want to find out what they were ticketed for, and if there is, a policy for ticketing those folks. And the reason is they're not allowed to be on the sidewalk, so if they can't be in the street either, we just have to figure that out and have some fair dialogue with community about that, that's all.
Correct, yeah, I'll look into that.
Okay, thank you, that's it, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Seal. Any other comments? Commissioner Berger?
The rapes, that's huge, a gigantic increase. Where were those located? Were they inside of a club? Where inside of a club? Or were they at the people's homes after going to a club?
Looking at the notes here, it would appear that most of them are after they left an establishment, they went back to a residence.
Okay. And then also was pretty huge is you guys catching 3 pickpocketers. That's very unusual. How did you catch them?
Our entertainment policing team has been really on it lately. They've been on it, but they've been looking at the people, building up a group of individuals and seeing what they're doing, and they happen to see them.
Because it was a couple of months ago when you guys had the ability to go undercover yourself into those places. Yeah. Because your pickpocketing overall has been down ever since then, since you caught that guy 3 months ago or whatever that had 15 phones?
Yeah.
Do you think that you're tapping into this organized crime ring?
I do. We definitely have an idea of what we're looking for. Based on our operations that we have done, we have a good eye now of what we look for when we go out and do these things, which is definitely helping, and I think it's making an impact because we know who they are.
Okay, my last question is, what do you need to help you reduce crime?
My honest opinion, more help. Entertainment policing team is without a sergeant. I have to run both teams, so I am responsible for the cops team during the day and the entertainment policing team at night. So stretching myself between both teams is very difficult. The entertainment policing team, they're very hardworking deputies. They want to work, they want to fight crime and reduce the crime in the city, but they don't have supervision, or it's very difficult for them they do as much as they can with what they have.
Thank you.
Which, Sergeant, just correct me if I'm wrong, but as we get into the holiday season, holiday parties, visitors from out of town, do we see an uptick in intoxication as well as ODs?
I don't have the numbers on that. I would think so, but I'd be speaking out of line if I gave you exact answers on that.
So with you being short-staffed, how can we alert residents to just be more mindful when they're out celebrating the holidays, because it is a joyous and jubilant time of year?
I think getting the information out would be great if the city does that. Again, another issue is we do not have a dedicated PIO for the station. We had a volunteer that did that for years. They have left the state, and we no longer have a PIO dedicated for that. So we have different people filling in, trying to get that information out. So again, it's all having the resources we need and the staffing we need.
Acronym PIO, what does that stand for?
The Public Information Officer.
Oh, okay. So we don't have a public information officer at the Sheriff's Department?
Not at our station, no.
Yeah, if I could just jump in as well, Chair. So to Sergeant Yost's point, in terms of holidays and what messaging is done, the city, no differently than last year, we not only increase block-by-block security, ambassador staff, but we also put out messaging, working with our communications department as well. So that's something that we'll be looking into to do this year, as we're right around the corner, right, with the holiday season ahead of us. So we'll make sure to include that and discuss that and work with our communications department.
Great, thank you, Director Rivas. Any other commissioner comments?
Quickly, for community safety, the community is more involved. We used to, it was even before I was on this commission, the commissioners would go around and put cards on people's door or their window and saying, please be careful that you have something on your car seat or whatever, something like that. It would be really cool if we activated our community to pick up the slack. They care.
And I believe the Sheriff's Department, we have those flyers that, hide it and lock your vehicles and don't leave things out in the open, that we can definitely obtain and put those out during the holiday. And we also are fielding a holiday car that will be additionally out there to assist with, keeping an eye out for the holiday issues.
And then the SDs, if I don't know if Lieutenant Lapkin said that those are up, and the audience probably doesn't know what that means because I didn't. I would like you guys to report on that each time you come, because that's an indication of violence. Do you happen to have those stats with you here today? Okay, so it's not important now, but she mentioned that those were up. And I thought it was a good indication of the kinds of violence that was happening out there. So that's all I have.
Any other commissioner questions? Vice Chair Balbone.
So thank you for the report on the rapes. One of the things that I just quickly scanned was the history in West Hollywood in October. And October has historically been a high month with the exception of 2020. And nobody was out in 2020. But 2018, it was 7. 2019, I think it was 3. And then we go to 2021, 4, and then this year, 5. So there's something about the month of October. I don't know if it's around Halloween. I did a quick scan of June. I didn't get through it all, but June also sees spikes, but not to the height of this. And I just think that as we talk about nightlife safety, we need to focus on this. This is clearly a time when there's more risk for people. And I think we need to figure out if there's anything we should be doing beyond what we're already doing, and I think we should include that in the nightlife safety discussion.
Absolutely.
Chair, can I just respond? I think a lot of this goes back to community, and I agree with Commissioner Berger 100% about re-engaging the community. So 2 points to that. One, Halloween and June Pride, those are the biggest out and about months for the LGBTQ community. The majority of these sexual assault events, when you go through the reports, are happening on the west side. They're happening after someone leaves a nightlife establishment. They're drink spiking related. We have the stats on that, to your point. And I think there has to be a better marriage of information between what the sheriff can offer and then engaging community, because there's places you're not going to get to. There's folks that aren't going to want to have that dialogue, and really it comes down to it. And I want to touch on that as it relates to the nightlife safety and the drink spiking test kits that went out, because It took us months to get this is not, I'm slipping in a city on this side of it, but it took months to get a response. You were on emails, I was on emails. We could not get an answer about when those strips were going back out to the public, and we were pushed back. We were told they'll be out at the end of the month, and then we were told, as the public was told, we were not told in advance, we were not engaged in dialogue, we were told as the public was told that they were being rolled out through a third party, which is fine. But for frame of reference, when the West Hollywood Chamber announced their Halloween programming, and I was so thrilled because I know how important that is.
Wait, Commissioner Steele, I don't want to interrupt you, but we are going to do item 8E, nightlife safety.
You want me to save? I can save it.
And I would rather you bring those issues up
got it.
then, because you and Vice Chair Balbone were part of, the conversation.
Okay.
Okay, don't forget.
Nope.
Any other questions for Sergeant Yost from the commissioners? Commission Secretary, do we have any questions or public comments?
No comments in chambers.
And I don't see, well, I do see one phone number. It's the same phone number, so we'll call upon that member of the public to see whether or not they would like to speak on this item. Hi, the phone number ending in 1642. I believe your name is Kevin. Kevin, I don't know whether or not you would like to speak on this item, but if you would, please press *6 and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. I don't think they wished to speak, Chair. Since we don't have any more public commenters, I also wanted to make mention to the Commission if we'd like to go over the stats. I know I did provide you all with a packet. I'm more than happy to share my screen so that all members of the public are capable of viewing that as well, and go over that briefly if that's okay with the Commission.
Sure. Thank you, Director Rivas.
Sure. Great. So, essentially, we just put together. This is all information again that our Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department provides us. We do have all of this information for members of the public as well who would like to access it. You can go to the City of West Hollywood's website, and if you simply just type in Public Safety Commission, it will bring you to a subpage, and under that subpage, you'll see where it says Public Safety Monthly Reports. And if you click on that file folder, it actually breaks it down into 3 different components, and one being the Sheriff's Department. So I think it's important for us to make mention of that to the members of the public and those that are here in the chambers, as well as those that are watching this evening. So what we're seeing here in terms of the first graph is simply just reiterating that information, but identifying at least some trends that are visible and can be observed by all, as well as the Commission, right? So these are your calls for service, and we're taking it back all the way to 2016. On that first graph, you'll notice that 2022 has no information on there yet, but that's because we're not at the end of 2022 calendar year, right? But we certainly wanted to make sure that we gave the Commission 6 calendar years prior to, so that you're seeing overall, right, the volume of calls. The next slide that or the next chart, excuse me, that you're seeing here is now composed of this calendar year of information. So Sergeant Yost did provide information and data as it relates to October of this year. So this is taking from January 1st to the end of last month, October 31st of this calendar year, and then going back 6 years prior. So you're seeing in 2016, right, is kind of like the starting point. As we get to the kind of data analysis of this, we're seeing that hovered about 19,500 calls. That slightly went up in 2017, again increased again in 2018, and then it went on a downward trend in 2019, and then of course you're seeing a significant decrease, in 2020 as a result of the pandemic, and then you're seeing those numbers creep back up. But where we're at for the 10 months of this year is still less if you're looking at 2018 and the years prior to that. But certainly that can ultimately change as we have 2 more months for the end of this calendar year. And then the next chart is reflecting a month to month of this calendar year. So January through October as well. And so just kind of, again, giving you a sense, and I heard October, I heard June. And so we're looking at those green arrows, right, and the upwards trend there. I am looking at April as well, and March, and just kind of seeing those, right, and we're seeing the decreases in the other months. So this is just kind of giving us a telltale sign of the types of calls and the volume of calls that are coming into our West Hollywood Sheriff Station. So now we're getting into Part 1 crime and incidents that occur here in the city of West Hollywood. So something that we actually did provide as a part of the community safety and well-being strategy plan is the first chart of information that you're seeing. And so you did look at the Los Angeles County overall. In terms of Part 1 crime, I know Sergeant Yost did mention, right, and touch on, based on Lieutenant Lapkin's comments and notes, that the Sheriff's Department obviously doesn't look at other cities and other areas because every area is a little bit different, obviously, with the density, et cetera. But I know that there was a question asked by one of the commissioners in terms of, hey, could we get some numbers, though, that we could provide to just give us a sense. And so this is where the information that we pulled from the Sheriff's website. So you're seeing kind of, again, that top line is for the entire Los Angeles County. So not to be confused with any other part, that's the entire Los Angeles County in terms of Part 1 crime. And then the bottom line graph that you're seeing is actually each calendar year comparison for the city of West Hollywood. So you're definitely seeing in 2016, 2,100 plus, and then that increased in 2017. It looks like it increased decently in 2018, and then it began to decrease in 2019, and then you're seeing even lesser in 2020, and then you're seeing last calendar year that number began to increase slightly. So same information here on the next 2 charts, but the Part 1 crime kind of annual comparison, again, is just the same information that you're seeing here in the top chart of that chart. And then here's a month, a year to date, January again to the end of October for Part 1 crime, just in the city of West Hollywood. So you're seeing, this same time frame, again, just looking at the calendar year, 10 months worth of data in terms of 2016, 17 it increased, 18 it increased, and then it went in a downward trend in 2019 and 2020, and began to increase in 2021, and here is where we're at in 2022. And then this next chart is, again, same for Part 1 crimes, but now it's just breaking it down by month for this calendar year for the last 10 months. You're getting a look at seeing kind of, I'm looking at June again and focusing on October. It looks like June, actually, it peaked the highest that you're seeing out of all the rest of the months for this calendar year. And then you're seeing that downward trend in July, as well as in August, very slight increase in September by 2 incidents, and then for the month of October, where we're at in terms of what Sergeant Yost had reported. And then I did just include, this was information that we had provided as well regarding pickpocket. And I know that we do have a discussion and an item on the agenda this evening to discuss the recommendations that the Public Safety Commission provided input and feedback on as a result of the study session. So I thought it was a good idea to also just highlight and reiterate the same information. This is an annual comparison of pickpocketing. Some of this information, all of this information actually, at least from 2016 to 2021, the commission's already seen when we did the study session. But what is updated is the last category there, which is January of this year to October of this year. And so you're seeing where we're at in total for those 10 months at 520. And then you're seeing a month to month of this calendar year. So you can certainly see where it peaked up, again, focusing on June, and then looking at the significant decrease in July as well as August. And then it looks like it's kind of more or less being sustainable in terms of the work that the entertainment policing team and Sergeant Yost and Lieutenant Lapkin and the impact that they're making there. So that is all of the graphs and the charts. You know, some of the information too that we will be presenting moving forward will also be the Part 2 crimes. Similarly to what you're seeing here, there is not as detailed or comprehensive data as it relates to that, but we're going to be pulling that as well. And then in terms of the Part 1 crime, I know we have a number of categories and line items within Part 1 crimes that are listed in the monthly reports. So we're going to begin to enter that information as well into a line graph so that you can see each of those individual line items. But I know I've mentioned this and I've said it quite more and more times every time that I'm reporting on this information. It does take time to enter in that information. So we're getting the PDF reports from the sheriff's station. We are then manually entering it in into these graphs. So obviously a lot of the legwork's already been done where we're pulling information from January right to this end of the month. So it's going to get a lot easier, but that's the reason why it is taking some time in terms of that. So happy to answer any questions. Of course, Sergeant Yost is here as well to answer any questions.
I have one quick question. The stats that obviously are completed through 2022, will we have those by our January meeting, or do you think it'll take a little longer to compile?
No, Chair, I think we should be able to have that. Yeah, typically in the beginning of the month, the crime analyst that works at the West Hollywood Sheriff Station already starts working on preparing the information from the month prior, right? So whatever we have that'll be reported to the commission in January will include December. So we'll have a full calendar year of information to be able to report on. And one of the updates that I'll be providing in terms of items from staff this evening, and I'll mention it now, is that you know, the public safety reports and updates, and I know that was something that Commissioner Berger and other commissioners had asked for, that is planned to go to the City Council at the end of December, and more or less it would be the second meeting in December. And so, you know, that will include 11 months worth of data from January 1st to the end of November, right? But to your point and to your question, Chair, we certainly will have information in January, you know, in terms of providing for that entire calendar year. And then we will be putting back on track and on schedule kind of the public safety updates on a 6-month basis.
Oh, great, thank you. And I would personally like to thank staff for doing this. I know it is quite intensive and laborsome, but I think it's very beneficial to the commission to see these statistics. Any other commissioner comments for Director Rivas? Vice Chair Balbon?
So I think this is really helpful, so thank you. As you dig in, a couple of the areas that I am concerned about, we know that as a city that attracts a lot of different people, we see the pickpocketing, which shows up in grand theft and petty theft. And we also know that vehicle burglary is very common. So those are things that ebb and flow, and as the city swells, we saw some of that go down in 20 and 21, and now it's spiking back up. I'd really like to hone in on residential burglary, other burglary, and then aggravated assaults, because we've seen some weird spikes with those over time. And to me, as someone who is a resident here, those are the things that I think are really unsettling for our residents. I'd also look at armed assault, because that's something that we've seen some weird situations that have happened where people are threatened with a gun on one of our streets. And the rest of this we have to take care of and we have to have strategies around, but that really makes people feel unsafe. And if we see spikes, we just have to figure out how to address them as a community. And I think there were some weird spikes in some of the months here with some of those.
And if I can just respond, actually, that's very helpful because, obviously, as we look at the monthly reports, there's a number of line items, right, that are there. So really, I think focusing on what you just pointed out, Vice Chair, allows us as staff to kind of just concentrate on those line items first. Not that we won't include other information in the future, but if it's the will of the commission and there's consensus there, I think to your point, what I just made mention here is vehicle burglaries, residential burglaries, aggravated assault, armed assault, sexual assault, including those categories, and in like the line graphs that we're seeing here. So we'll begin to work on those as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any, Commissioner Berger?
These are good, and I liked how you've put a lot of work in. It's really easy to see. I really like how you've done this, and you're taking those paper PDFs and working with them. But one big assumption that we are making as a commission is we're looking at calls for service, for example, and these crimes reported as a correlation with the amount of crimes. And I think that is inaccurate. There is, I get a feeling because I get emails every day and with these different groups and different websites as well, and I get here from the residents. I believe the crime has gone up. And why I think that that's happening is if you read the posts that the people make, they say, don't waste your time reporting the crime. So if you've reported a crime and nothing has happened, the people didn't get caught, the police say, we caught them, but they're out in a week or less days, they tend to stop reporting. I would like us to find a way, and I believe that there's a way to do this, to where we can get the information from those websites and those discussion groups and put that correlation. And also, there are certain crimes that everybody, almost all people, really do report. And I would like to see an algorithm to aggregate those. Pickpockets, I think most people report, I guess, I'm not sure. Murders they report because you've got a dead body there. So there are certain things that almost everybody's going to report, but I believe that we are making the assumption by the calls for service means if they've gone down, the crime has gone down. I think we need something more accurate and the satisfaction of our residents and our customers out there as well. I would like us to have some way to measure how satisfied they are with crime and do they feel safe and things like that. There's ways we can do that. So it's putting it out there for us and our new commissioners to work on, but I just want to make that something really impress upon the importance of having accurate data to reflect exactly what's happening out there.
Thank you, Commissioner Berger. Hopefully, again, we'll be a new body in January and we can address some of these issues. We'll have some new appointees. Do we have any other comments for Sergeant Yost? All right, thank you, sir, for your time.
If I add one thing real quick, based on that, if those people do want to report, please report those crimes. I know people get frustrated and feel like they're not being handled or dealt with, but any crime reported, that doesn't go anywhere. It stays with us. It's not like it disappears. So you may feel like nothing's happening in that case, but your case is sitting there, and then we do finally catch somebody, and we can tie it back to your case. So it doesn't happen, you know, it might not happen right away, but eventually we're going to build up enough to where we can find that person. So please report all those crimes.
And you mentioned that tonight with the burglary that you caught. So you went backward and found out what else that person had done back in June and July. So that's a really good point. Thank you.
All right, anything else? Sergeant Yost? You?
That's it. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you for your time. Please be safe. Item 8C, report from our block-by-block security ambassadors. I see we have double trouble this evening.
Shay Gibson, Operation Manager of Block by Block. I'll be reporting out on the activities for October. So, of course, we know that we did do our launch in October for our residential patrol, and also placed the rest of our kiosks out on the streets. Our residential patrols have been received pretty well. We've implemented routes for our teams to identify potential hotspots for activity within the residentials. The east side still seems to conjure the most activity. We've had 29 unhoused residents contacts on the east side, which is leading the throughout the west, mid-city as well. And hospitality activity in the east side is up to 65. So that's a good thing for us. It seems like the residents are happy to have us out there. They have been seeing us, and we have been engaging with them. As far as the kiosks goes, our busiest kiosks have seemed to be La Brea and Robertson. As far as the street kiosks, the ones at the park, a reigning top would be West Hollywood Park. At those kiosks, the ambassadors are required to engage the public. They should be doing a perimeter check every 15 minutes. So they're definitely up and moving about. We've been receiving positive feedback as far as that goes as well. So we're happy that we've launched them, and we're happy that things are going so well with them. Our Melrose and Sunset kiosks came out a little bit later than the rest of the kiosks due to finding storage in that sense for them. But we have came up with a solution. Our Sunset kiosk is actually stationed at the Sunset Spectacular. And our Melrose kiosk is right across the street south of Earth Cafe. If you all have seen it. If not, that's where you can find us. We've also added a couple of new reports. One being our kiosk contact report, our residential report, and also our response time report. So we did call the sheriffs just twice in October, which the response times were very swift. So I do appreciate that from them. We also have been meeting with LASD to discuss crime trends on a regular basis. We got with them for Halloween, where we came out Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, actually. Met with the sheriff department, and then we conducted patrols with both them and, of course, our team as well. So that was good, and I think that was a good show for the community. We also had rape treatment training as far as the rape treatment center goes with the sheriff department. Mr. Rivas has scheduled us for another training, which will commence tomorrow about 1 p.m. So we're looking forward to that. And That's it for right now. That's it for right now. Any questions on any of that stuff?
You know, I have a question. I know you worked really hard to augment the staff, and there's so many new ambassadors on the street. But I think the program could possibly still be unfamiliar to some residents. So is it possible for when they're doing their foot patrol to have cards that they can pass out to residents, you know, kind of introducing themselves, you know, this is a program that's supported by the city, so more people are aware?
Absolutely. I know we've been working on some things with Mr. Rivas as far as publication goes. So as soon as that's in hand, we will commence.
Okay, great. Commissioners?
Yeah, that's a great idea. So what would it be, like little business cards or something and they could hand out to residents?
It could be, or it may be a pamphlet. I'm not exactly sure what it is exactly, but whatever it is, we'll be definitely glad to do that.
Yeah.
We want to get the word out as much as possible.
Yeah, and leave it at buildings and stuff, so if people see something, they can call you guys.
Absolutely.
And yeah,
Absolutely.
that's a great idea.
Thank you, Commissioners. Any other? Commissioner Steele.
Thank you. Yeah, we had asked staff, I believe, to do who to call and when, so some type of comparison card. Is that what I see, Danny? Okay. And so I think to your point, Commissioner Roman, that information would be there so they know who to call, when to call the sheriff, when to call block by block, and how to best utilize those services. Thank you for the report. I had a couple questions. You had mentioned the Robertson and La Brea kiosks being the busiest. Did I hear that right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any key findings there, like any differences in needs and calls? Those are two super kind of specific areas of the city.
They are. I find that at the La Brea and Robertson kiosks, we will receive more contacts as far as the in-house go and social service referral. The Robertson kiosk is more residentials trying to get to know what's going on with us. And we will receive a few safety-related issues at the kiosk as well.
Perfect. That segues to my next question, which do we have any data on calls related to mental health services, social services, and kind of wrap around? And sorry if I missed it, but how many folks were kind of getting connected with those services from those kiosks?
Not specifically categorized at the kiosk, but that's a great mention, and I will see about getting you some information.
Okay, thanks. I think as the public kind of starts to ask questions about what we're doing, I think that'd be another great thing to offer, and especially with the Halloween motel coming into effect, I know there's some concerns there, so however we can kind of continue to let folks know how we're doing that. And then any update on the Narcan? If I have it right, I think you had the training, but not the actual Narcan.
So we have the training, we have the Narcan is deployed, so each ambassador has a Narcan with them while they're out on patrol.
Fabulous, thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Berger.
I have two. One for David Aguilar. David, when I first got on the commission and you were here, you took me around and we walked all around the city and you pointed out different places that were more fertile for loitering and those kinds of things. One of the seats on the corner by Target, the different places people were plugging their phones in, those were congregating areas. Do you think it would be helpful? Lieutenant Dietrich, he works with Home, and he goes and he has a thing called environmental protection or something like this that helps prevent, so it's not as inviting. Do you have any ideas on that? Do you still believe that's a big cause of the kind of loitering, those sort of areas like that?
It definitely can be. I mean, I know Shay and his team are out here every single day. Just speaking for accounts that we have in Southern California, there's definitely certain pieces of infrastructure that are inviting to a lot of folks. Oh, I'm sorry. Oops. Yeah, there's a big difference. No, I was saying I'm sure Shay can definitely speak to the West Hollywood related infrastructure, but just me speaking in general for what we've seen through some of the locations that I help oversee, there's definitely pieces of infrastructure out there that can be inviting to everyone. Lots of places work to cover up their electrical outlets that are out available to the public. I mean, we've got cities all over the place that have Christmas tree lighting that people will kind of tap into to charge their phones. It's definitely worth exploring. Thinking back to what you were referencing, the Gateway, back when they had some of their planners and some of their areas that were definitely an attractant to a lot of people. It was definitely harder, though, to get some of those areas addressed just because of the city planning. And I know that certain buildings and certain properties have certain requirements that they also have to meet when it comes down to like the permits. So I will say it's probably easier said than done for sure, but it's definitely worth taking a look at to see what we can work on changing here. But I think Shay, that's probably something that's best to have somebody come out and visit with Shay just to see if, as he mentioned, he's identified a few hotspots already. So those are conversations worth having with him and his team for sure.
And it would be probably Lieutenant Dietrich, right? Sergeant Yost, he's the expert on that kind of stuff. He knew about it. Shay, you might want to contact Sergeant Yost to get Lieutenant Dietrich's information. The second thing is David, you and I walked around and I says, how do you know that your block by block guys are visiting all of these locations? And you showed me a way that they had that baton. I don't know if you still use that baton.
Yeah, so that's so we've got a couple different systems in place that we have. The whole checks and balances, making sure that our ambassadors are where they're supposed to be. One, as it was shared with you all, is our proprietary tracking system, our smart system, that gives us the ability to track our data through stat collection. But it's also it has GPS technology, so we can actually see where our ambassadors have been, what the movement has been like, how long they've been in certain areas and certain places. I know that with the residential detail that we had launched recently, that's actually something that Shay has expanded. So it never left. We've always had that here, and it's still a system that's used. But Shay also expanded that and introduced that into our residentials as well. So what you were, what you once got to see during that walk with me has already been implemented in the residentials, as well as routes that Shay has created for our ambassadors to ensure that they're following.
This is correct. So it's also, it's in all the residentials, it's also in all the parks, and there are certain points at the kiosk locations as well. So when say for instance, the kiosk officers are getting up to do their perimeter checks, they will go to these certain areas and use that wand to tap that area. And therefore, when we can always go back and look to see and to make sure, as far as quality control goes, to make sure that they've been there.
Do you, the reason I'm asking part of it is, on Veterans Day, I walked 3 hours up and down Sunset, Santa Monica Boulevard, all those areas, and I didn't see one block by block guy. Were your guys out there?
Absolutely.
Can you check that? Because I didn't see one.
Absolutely.
And also, I didn't see any cop cars patrolling. It was really rare. Okay, and lastly, just a presentational thing. I really loved how you put the presentation up on the screen while you were talking about it. Can you guys consider doing the same thing with your charts? Can you set that up while they're talking? Can you put the charts up, and so the public and the Zoom and the recordings can watch those as well? Sure. Same with the fire.
Yeah, absolutely. We can put that up, and staff can do that for block by block the next time they report. I also just wanted to make mention, and maybe I'll do it now. Maybe I'll share my screen now if that's okay. But I wanted to just make mention that you'll notice that the report this month is separated and a little bit different from what you've typically have seen. You have the beginning page listed as Santa Monica, and so that covers obviously the boulevard and the commercial thoroughfare there. And then the next chart is focused on Sunset, followed by Melrose. And then you have the two parks, right? You have Plummer Park, and then you have West Hollywood Park. So all of that information is information that's been presented in the past, since those components of the programs have been in place. However, they have been separated in terms of Melrose being pulled out. It used to be included in the Santa Monica Boulevard report, but we wanted to make sure that we were providing detailed information into each of the patrols, right, and the work that the security ambassadors that are working those shifts are assigned to. And then here on page 6 of the PDF, you'll see that this chart is 100% focused to the residential expansion. And so that is what began, right, as a result of City Council direction on October 1st of this year. So this is the first time in terms of this information that you're actually seeing it. And so this is 100%, again, just dedicated to the residential patrol. It doesn't cover the commercial boulevard patrols, et cetera, that have been reported on in the past. And you'll see that it has been separated by the block-by-block team in terms of the east side of the city, the center of the city, and the west side of the city to mirror what you typically see, right, in our Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department data as well. Obviously, different categories that are listed here in terms of the contacts, because block by block does provide a different type of service. But it's important to make mention that we are working also with our communications department as well as our consultant that the city has contracted with. I know there was a mention about the business card and pamphlet, and so we are working on both. There'll be kind of a trifold pamphlet that will be a handout, as well as kind of a smaller version, a resource card, if you will, that folks will be able to be provided. We're also looking into doing a mailer. And in that mailer, we're going to be including magnets for folks. And in that magnet, that'll also have a number of different calls that folks would be able to reach out to in terms of the appropriate agency. And we do have a 1-800, a new telephone number that we're going to be marketing as well. I don't want to get too ahead of myself because I know our communications team, again, is just working very closely with our department and with our consultants in terms of pushing that out. But hopefully by the end of this year, this calendar year, the idea is to start pushing all of that information out and getting it out to the public. So,
thank you. Commissioner Steele.
Thank you. And it's great to be able to see that report for the first time. So thank you for pulling that together. 2 quick questions for you. Plummer Park restroom count, what is that?
So it's basically how many times people are entering the restroom.
And those are floor to ceiling doors on those restroom stalls?
Correct.
Okay. And do you have any instances where you have to assist folks? Folks are in the restroom and they need help.
Not necessarily needing help in the restroom, maybe needing help getting out of the restroom. But
okay. Like a locked door situation?
Well, you know, you may have a line building up. A person may be in there. They're not supposed to be bathing or anything like that in there. So, you know, we will do a what we call a routine maintenance check just to see if the person is okay, make sure they haven't passed out inside or anything like that. Once they respond, typically a few minutes after that, they'll come on out.
Okay, thank you. And then do we have any stats related to assault with those restrooms? Are there any incidents?
No, but I can definitely look into that.
Okay, thank you. And then I appreciate that. And then hospitality assist, can you talk to me a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, so that can be simply as, you know, someone asking the time, letting us know something that's going on in the park, coming to have a casual conversation while they're waiting for a game of pickleball, whatever the case may be.
Okay, just general engagement.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then the only other piece is I think with the Narcan piece, I think that is huge, given the work that's already happened in the city with council, with our sober community, et cetera. I think that warrants its own publication. I know that the sheriffs have it. Now knowing that Block by Block has it and it's deployed, I really think that would be something great to get out. I know there's a lot of pressure and a lot of asks from comms, but that's a very big deal. And at least getting it to our sober community and the folks that lead our sober programming would be huge, as well as human services. So, thank you.
Any other questions? Vice Chair Balbone.
So I wanted to let you know that I run into lots of your folks on my morning walks.
Okay.
And they all stop and say good morning.
Fantastic.
And say hello. I do chat with them and ask them how it's going. One of the ideas that I have after talking with one of them on Saturday at Robertson is they're new, so getting to know some of our businesses, depending on where they're deployed from one day to the next, they may not have exposure. So as we think about those cards, sending them around to meet new businesses would be great. But I also wonder, is there anything we could hand out and work with the chamber little map that says, here's West Hollywood, here's all the resources, including some of our business establishments, kind of a twofer, because it might help them to get to know them, but also to direct people to them, because that's one of the things they shared with me is a lot of people are like, hey, where's this?
Right. Yeah, we'll be glad to be involved with anything that makes sense.
And if we do something like that, because this is the Public Safety Commission, a couple of things that might be helpful if we give them reminders about city businesses and where they're located. Don't leave things in your car and test your drink. I think we should probably think about that and watch your friends. So, you know, if there's any little public safety announcements we can partner with the city businesses on, I think it would be good.
Yeah, absolutely, Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? I have one last one. I know our boundaries are kind of all over the place in the city, and you cover Sunset, the Strip, right? But what about residential streets that I think, if I'm correct, there are a few north of Fountain, between Fairfax and Crescent Heights, that are West Hollywood? Is that correct? Director Rivas, you might not know that.
Yeah, I would have to look at the map, but I believe you are correct in terms of there being maybe one or two or a few, and it's a little awkward where you may have half of the block or one street that's West Hollywood, and then the other side City of LA.
Yeah. So my question is, now that your team has been increased, are you able to go north of Fountain? Like, I think, what is it, Hayworth is the street where the DGA is. I believe that's technically West Hollywood. Are you able to patrol those areas?
Yeah, it's as long as it's in West Hollywood, we should be able to patrol those areas, yes.
Okay, because I know I've heard from residents in those areas, and not directed necessarily to block by block, or it's just that they feel like they don't get any love. Okay. That no one comes out just to, do a safety check, and that would be sheriffs as well.
Yeah, I think that's just going to require a little bit more research on our part, just to ensure that that area is 100% covered by the Sheriff's Department, because I know, even speaking from my past experiences, we've received phone calls for service in that general area, and when we've contacted the Sheriff's Department, that may not be an area that they patrol. So they've directed us to LAPD, so then now we're connecting them with their senior lead officer for that area, because that is an area that is patrolled by LAPD. So I think for us, we just really have to ensure that that's still considered West Hollywood. I've also heard from residents that they share the same zip code as West Hollywood, but it's not necessarily located in the West Hollywood area, it's just outside in the LA area. And right around that neighborhood, just north of Fountain, east of Crescent Heights, it gets a little finicky as far as what's West Hollywood and what it isn't. So I think for us, for our team, we just have to really just make sure 100% that that's still considered part of West Hollywood, and we shouldn't have an issue going up that way if that's the case.
Okay, great, thank you. Any additional questions? All right, gentlemen, do we have public comments, Commissioner Secretary?
No public comments in chambers.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right, moving on. Item 8D. Oh, also, Director Rivas, how many commissioners do we need to have seated per meeting to have a quorum?
A majority, so 4.
4, okay.
Correct.
I have to leave at 8 o'clock, sorry.
Okay.
So that being said, does the commission wish to speak about the pickpocketing memo now, as opposed to the gender neutral? And I only bring that up because I know Commissioner Roman has reached out about follow-up regarding that. So if it's the will of the entire and consensus of the commission and you guys are willing to do that, although I do know that there are speakers and members of the public that are here for the gender-neutral item as well.
So you're suggesting we move forward to item 8E, correct, and then circle back?
If it's the will of the commission, given Commissioner Roman having to leave.
Sorry, 8F. Commissioners, are we in agreement? Okay, thank you. So then we are moving forward to item 8F, which is pickpocketing studies session from the August 24th special meeting.
Correct, and I am sharing my screen. I think I'm going to get in a habit of sharing my screen even with the reports. I think it's a great idea, actually, Commissioner Berger, so that folks that are watching can certainly see what's on the screen. And so what I did provide here as attachment to the staff report, given the commission's direction, is a draft of a letter memo that would be sent to the city council regarding the recommendations. So in short, similar to what we had sent with the dockless mobility memo, we did highlight 4 different kind of themes, if you will, in terms of the input and feedback that we received from some businesses and residents that attended the study session. And I'll just rattle those off. I know they're on the screen, but I'll just state them anyways. So businesses essentially in the Rainbow District, with the exception of 2, and 2 of which that I believe actually came forth and participated, do not possess a device that verifies the identification of a customer, right? So the overall bulk and the majority of the business establishments that we heard from do not have any sort of mechanism in place, with the exception of 2 that came forward. The other is just the lack of information sharing between security personnel at businesses. That was something that we heard kind of more or less a common theme from some of the security staff and from some of the managers. Video storage is purged at some businesses within 7 to 10 days. So we did hear, depending on somebody's video footage system that they have, some folks are capable of having it maybe for 3 days, maybe a week. It kind of varies, right? And so that was something that was brought up. And then the 4th kind of general concern that we heard is just kind of the lack of scheduled foot patrol presence in the Rainbow District by the West Hollywood Sheriff Station and block-by-block personnel. So kind of in response to that, we kind of outlined a number of recommendations that are here in the bullet points before you. And so the first to address some of those concerns is to implement a pilot program that requires the utilization of identification devices at all businesses that serve alcohol for on-site consumption, and assess the effectiveness of the program after 1 year. I know there was a mention about maybe creating some sort of incentive program for businesses, but again, that can be a part of kind of the implementation of a pilot program. So if the commission wishes us to kind of notate that or depict that in the memo, we can, but that more or less kind of covers that item. I know there were a couple of companies that were mentioned. I think from me looking at the video and reviewing the video, we kind of wanted to steer away from that and just kind of keep it broad, right, in terms of an identification, if that's the will of the commission and something for, again, the city council to consider or not. The second bullet point is to direct staff to coordinate a regular meeting with the managers and security personnel to share information regarding pickpocketing and other public safety related issues. So again, that kind of addresses the lack of information sharing that we heard some of the establishments mentioning, that, hey, it's kind of difficult, right, and challenging for us to maybe reach out to another establishment. So if we kind of work with them and establish that meeting, that may be helpful, of course, for businesses to share information, whether it's for pickpocketing or not. And then the third bullet point here is to set kind of a set schedule. I heard that a little earlier during the sheriff's report, right, about maybe looking into some additional foot patrols. Mention of one of the establishments that stays open right past 2 a.m. and kind of the crowdedness, et cetera. So, but looking back at our notes, what the commission had referred to was 11:30 p.m. to 2:30 a.m. We did put Thursday through Saturday because those tend to be the busiest evenings, probably more so obviously Friday and Saturday, but it does start to pick up a little bit on Thursday as well. I know there was a mention that the commission had mentioned about Sunday, maybe a little earlier, like around brunch. I know a couple of establishments as well have some activities and things that are going on there too. So if you wanted me to include that on behalf of the commission, can certainly do that as well. Again, this is just a draft. And then the next bullet point refers to asking the West Hollywood Sheriff Station to reach out to the Federal Bureau of Investigation to see if they do have any sort of availability or teams or somebody, right, that can possibly work with the Sheriff Station to provide any assistance as it relates to any potential organized pickpocketing crime groups that may be operating here in West Hollywood. And then the last bullet point was to install video cameras in the Rainbow District and work with businesses in establishing cloud storage of their video footage that can be accessed by law enforcement agencies. Again, that's something that the commission brought up when I was reviewing the video, so I incorporated it into this draft. So I'm open to any suggestions, any comments. I think the idea is once we solidify this or not, that we send this to the City Council, no differently again that we did with the dockless mobility. And then, as I mentioned a little earlier, there will be a more in-depth conversation regarding community safety for the City of West Hollywood and in the next month. And so as we do that, the idea is to now add this memo as well as a part of maybe the nighttime study session update that the City Council will be discussing as well. Open to any input and feedback that.
Thank you, Director Rivas. This is great. I'm Commissioner Roman.
I think it's great. I think just to establish a set schedule for foot patrols. So what I notice when I'm out in West Hollywood, like, yeah, you can see block by block there, but they're on bikes, they're moving around. Like, I would love to see like uniform, like a block by block person on every corner and maybe like a cop or two mixed in there. So it just looks really uniformed and they're not, because sometimes like block by block is hanging out on San Vicente and Santa Monica on the southeast corner where there's nobody and they're like standing there. It's like, no, we want you to stand. So it'd be like literally designated areas where they're standing from these times. And then especially at 2:30, it's crazy on that corner. I mean, everybody's trying to get Ubers. That's probably when a lot of the pickpocketing and the crimes are happening. But everybody's drunk. They're all standing around. And so I would love to see like uniform, like so that they're literally on this corner and that's where they are. So I think that that's a little vague by saying establish a set schedule of foot patrols, but maybe it can be dialed in a little bit, or they can get to that later on.
What I could add, Commissioner Roman, is just maybe establish a set schedule for designated areas.
Yeah.
For foot patrols.
Okay.
Anything else, Commissioner Roman?
I think it looks great.
I've got something. Because those businesses were kind enough to come, the managers, the owners, some of them came here and invested their time and gave us some super good feedback. What I would like to see is reciprocating that with them, meaning monthly, you send them something like this outline with some very carefully crafted questions to them and get their feedback and bring that feedback to us. And that way they know that we're on it and they can say, no, your guys are going the wrong way, or this has changed. We want feedback from those particular people who were very involved. And also you missed even questions that we may not have liked, like the citizen's arrest by block. I want to see that publicly on this paper here, and I want to see our answer to them. Because the things that they recommended that they wanted, I want to see it very clearly put back to them. I think if we do this monthly, it shows that we're not letting it go and we're getting feedback directly from the people on the front lines.
Not to interrupt you, Commissioner Berger, but Commissioner Roman has to leave. Director Rivas, we are not meeting in December, correct?
That is the email that I had sent.
So do we know, could this possibly be Commissioner Roman's last meeting with us?
Oh, why would it be?
I don't know if you, because I know there are new appointees that will start, what, possibly January?
February 23rd, I think, is when the end of the term goes with these.
Okay, perfect. That's all I wanted to make sure you were here.
We wanted to give you a big hug.
Yeah, we wanted to give you a send-off. All right, sorry, Commissioner Berger, did you have anything else?
So what do you guys think about that idea that we, and not just those guys, but anybody that comes like this as a group, that we continue staying in touch with them and we let them know what we're doing and we continue feedback with them, and it can just be online poll or something like that where they can say yes or no and maybe write their comments on this, for example, this outline that we're working on.
Commissioners, anything else to add to that?
I like the idea. I like the idea of an online poll. Yeah, I have concerns about highlighting specific businesses and not doing it kind of in a unilateral way in relation to other areas of crime where they have not at all been engaging with us that we really need to talk about desperately, like sexual assault. So I'm a little cautious on that.
When you do have a group that came here like this and put their time into it, to follow up with them and okay, well, this is what we're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
And is it working, or is this correct? Did you see anything wrong with the approach we're taking? And can you give us some more comments on continuous feedback as the landscape changes?
Yeah, and if I may, I know one of the recommendations is for staff to coordinate regular meetings. You know, we didn't put in monthly. It's been my experience working with businesses, not only here in West Hollywood, but for other jurisdictions, is that you know, you meet when there's an important issue, and folks are there, they're active, they start participating, and then the participation starts to fall off a little bit if you're having monthly meetings. So it may be good as you're kind of kicking it off to do something like that. And of course, you know, we can certainly report back as part of items from staff, or if you guys want to add that as a part of another update that we have monthly that's provided to the Public Safety Commission. But we're going to get to a point eventually where, whether it's quarterly, whether it's biannually, and I can just share, working with the neighborhood watch groups recently, both Jessica and I had met with the neighborhood watch groups, given them more or less kind of an opportunity, kind of took a poll of folks that are there, and ultimately folks asked, as opposed to meeting on a monthly basis, to meeting you know, less frequently, right? So I'm not saying that the business community wouldn't be up for that. Just know as well that every 2 weeks, community safety, along with other city staff and even our sheriff's department, we meet with the Chamber of Commerce, as well as all of their members. And so you have a number of the businesses that are on that call every 2 weeks with us, and that happens every month. And so we go over public safety related issues. We have an opportunity to hear from the businesses as well as a part of that. Of course, we're not focused on, you know, like the pickpocketing, right? But if there is an issue or there's things that come up, we discuss that with them. And sometimes you can have upwards to, you know, 60 different businesses that are actually on that call, which, you know, is actually a good level, a high level of participation. So I just wanted to make mention of that. I mean, really what we're kind of looking at here, or at least how I was looking at it as, is, you know, coordinating within not just the Rainbow District, but all of our entertainment venues in West Hollywood, and we have a list of all of those, and then asking them, you know, when we first meet, how frequent they would like to meet, and really getting their input and feedback like we did with the neighborhood watch group. And also taking into account kind of the impact too that has for staff on the polling and meeting and reporting, and we're happy to do that. I'm not saying that we're not, But I think hearing from them too, because we did have a couple of businesses that were here, but I could tell you that that was like less than 1% of the alcohol establishments that were here present during the pickpocketing study session. I know how many businesses we have, I know how many licenses we hold, and how many folks that we've seen more or less participate in meetings that we've had. So just food for thought just to kind of bring to the commission's attention.
Maybe a poll, something just short that they don't have to put a lot of energy into, that's all.
Commission Secretary, do we have any public comments on this item, 8F?
No comments in chambers on this item.
Okay, commissioners, anything additionally? Commissioner Seal?
Thank you. I appreciate what you just said because I'm also concerned about the bandwidth on staff and there's something already kind of covering the meetings. So I, first of all, want to note, as we talked earlier about the pickpocketing, and there was a statement made at some point that, you know, the numbers are down because of all the work that everyone's doing. And I'm not doubting the work, and I'm not doubting that the sheriffs are out there, but I just want to keep it at the forefront that we learned in that study session that nightlife have dipped in those months. So it's not necessarily on board to say it's because of a specific concerted effort. It's because the traffic was down, which we see in numbers across the board. So I just want to make sure we're keeping that information present. I had spoken to one of the LGBTQ liaison officers for LASD who we chatted a little bit about Pride and about pickpocketing at Pride. And again, this goes back to June. This goes back to, to Pride and Halloween and these things. But I'd like to see more engagement because there hadn't been at that time, from my understanding, that there are huge issues happening in West Hollywood in specifically there's many in the Rainbow District. That's the heaviest concentration. So again, I just think getting a little bit ahead of when we see these things happening. Are we reaching out to LASD? Are we setting up meetings to talk about what their queer community spaces look like? Are they being targeted? How that correlates and how we can work to keep both our LGBTQ community safe and anybody and everybody that goes to our nightlife establishments, in addition to the other categories. We got information during that study session that identification did not play a role in any of the arrests that were made. Identification and the capture of identification didn't play a role. There's no data and there's no statistics around that. I'm very concerned about capturing data for the sake of checking a box when both the nightlife establishments and the sheriff made it clear that none of the arrests that happened were due to that capture of identification, and it didn't aid them in any kind of direct impact way, from my understanding. So I'm not a fan of capturing the identification. Many community members that I spoke to didn't know at these establishments that they were capturing and saving their identification to a cloud. They didn't have that information. And when you're going up to the door, they're not telling you that. They have signage, right? So that's technically, they're legally covered. But I'm very concerned about advancing something like that that feels more like policing our community than accountability for the responsibility of capturing folks that are committing these crimes. And so that feels like an effort in that vein, and I'm not in support of that at all. And the same thing for the cameras in the Rainbow District. Again, this city was built to be a safe haven for LGBTQ folks and others, and there is a concern. I think we would need a study. We would need a lot more information on what that would look like. But I personally would not want to see cameras throughout the Rainbow District that captures queer community. We have folks that aren't out. It can affect employment. It can affect livelihood. It can affect safety. We're here to keep the public safe. And I'm concerned that in some of these areas, we lean more towards policing the public than holding these partners to accountability. And I know it's a big task. I know it's not an easy task. But I don't think cameras capturing what's happening. Security made it very clear how they're able to spot these folks. There was some great information to Commissioner Berger's point about that. I think there's other ways to action the information received than instantaneously policing our community. And I am just completely avidly against policing queer spaces with cameras and identification capture. And I think you'd have a responsibility to be very clear and very vocal with the public. And I think we would see a dip in traffic in our nightlife from it.
Thank you, Commissioner Steele. I have mixed emotions on this because anytime you're in Europe, there's CCTV everywhere. You can't go anywhere without being viewed. And I actually think the ID capture and the cameras in the Rainbow District are good ideas, but maybe we need to explain why the city is doing this. That the city is not doing this to police the LGBTQ community, but more for everyone's safety.
I think I hear that, and I understand it. I also think there's different areas where oppression doesn't exist so much, unfortunately, as it does still here in so many ways. But I think if there was a path that could be laid out, that hasn't been laid out for us yet, of how these things achieve more, not just safety, because I think people say, oh, safety, when we need more cameras and we need more, okay, but those things aren't working now. So my concern is, what is the path? What does that look like? And how do we know? Because one of the things that came up was the footage, and I think that's great, but quite frankly, we have 100% of these sexual assault cases that are unsolved. We have current cases now with footage that has been reviewed, that I have copies of, that the sheriff has copies of. And again, it is not an easy task, so please understand that I know that, but my point is, it's not that we don't have footage, and it's not that we can't access footage. It's where do we go from there? And I just think we need more robust information about why these crimes remain unsolved and where that goes before we say more cameras will solve the problem. That's just my lens.
Are we on the pickpocketing, or did we move to nighttime safety?
We actually were on item 8F, pickpocketing. We have not gone to nighttime safety yet.
Because a lot of these people were here for the bathrooms.
Yes, the gender neutral,
Okay.
yes, I agree. We will go back to that. I just think one last thing I'll add to Commissioner Steele's comments, maybe we need to liaise with cities that do this and do it successfully and find out how effective these programs are in their city and how we can implement them in the city of West Hollywood.
So just one clarifying question on the memo. So I did hear Commissioner Steele's concerns regarding that. That is a bullet point that's mentioned in the memo. Is it the will of the commission seated now to remove that item from the memo or keep it as is and let City Council consider that?
I'd like to propose an amendment. I think that we know these things were discussed when we talked, and there are things that this commission would, we do some contracting where I work. So above the line, where we all agree, we say these are the things we stand behind 100% and we recommend you move forward with. Below the line for your consideration are ideas that were shared that require additional consideration, discussion, and vetting because of, yes, security concerns, but also privacy concerns and implementation concerns. And if we were to do that, I think we've carried the spirit of the discussion forward, and it allows for the robust dialogue that you've both talked about.
Makes sense, Vice Chair, and thank you for bringing that up. So aside from that one bullet point, and I'm looking at the last bullet point in terms of the video cameras as well as the cloud storage, we also touched on the identification. So if I'm understanding correctly, I would look at the implementation of the pilot program as it relates to the identification of devices And the last bullet point here regarding the video cameras as being placed in that section, that subsection that you mentioned. Is that correct?
Mhm.
So how are we looking to amend?
That we would just say that we fully recommend everything above that line, and those other two things are parked here for your consideration with more robust community dialogue and consideration for privacy concerns.
Got it. Director Rivas?
Yep, I understand that. So
Okay.
I can make those adjustments. And then does the commission wish me to circulate it one last time via email to all the commissioners to take a look at?
Yeah, that
before
would be
sending
great.
out?
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, we're done with pickpocketing, correct, commissioners? So we can go back to item 8D, multi-stall, gender-neutral restrooms. Staff, do you have an update for us?
I do, and it's just very brief. So what you're seeing here at the will and the request of the commission at last meeting was to make sure that we posted it again, right? So that what you're seeing in terms of the staff report and the attachments is all more or less the same, with the exception of the last attachment to the staff report, and which is attachment D. And that's what I really wanted to kind of highlight, because what attachment D did is it updated information in terms of what folks, staff from our planning and development services. So we had our long range planning manager, Francisco Guerreros, who was here, as well as Ben Galan, our building and safety manager and building official that were here that presented the item, as you recall, last month. And so with that, I know there were some questions raised in terms of what further outreach was going to be conducted with the item, right? And so I wanted to just highlight that for the commission, some of which was mentioned during their presentation. And so I'll start off with, they did go to the West Hollywood Chamber of Commerce Governmental Affairs Committee. So that occurred last month on the 11th. And then that was followed the next day at the Public Safety Commission. Again, this information in terms of what the commission was provided was also provided to both of these bodies. And then on the 13th, so it looks like they had a quite busy week that week, because they also attended the LGBTQ Advisory Board and also presented the information. You are seeing on the 10th, which was our last meeting, the information in terms of what was being considered and the feedback received. And then what has already occurred for this month, and I'm just trying to scroll down a little bit here, is the Transgender Advisory Board was presented the item on November 2nd. And then the following day on November 3rd, this item was presented to the Planning Commission. And the 16th has not yet come yet, but the Disabilities Advisory Board will be presented the item in 2 days from today, so on Wednesday. And then the Women's Advisory Board, looks like they will be receiving the information regarding this item on Thursday. So this Thursday, they will be receiving that. And then the Senior Advisory Board here, let's see, is scheduled for their presentation on the 30th. So at the end of this month, the staff members, again, that presented this item plan to attend that meeting to present this information. Let me scroll down just a little bit more, make sure. And so, yeah, so that's all of the information in terms of updates, because I believe maybe one or two of these bodies were mentioned by the commission in terms of wanting to make sure that they were going to be presented the information for input and feedback, no differently than the Public Safety Commission is. So that concludes my updates as a result of the information provided. So.
All right, thank you, Director Rivas. Commissioners, any follow-up questions?
Questions or comments in general?
To what Director Rivas just, we're good?
About the whole bathrooms thing? Are we going to,
Just do what you said.
okay, no.
Well, but do we have public comments on item 8D?
Yes, we do have public comment.
Okay, then maybe we should move to public comments at this time. Thank you.
Okay.
Stephanie Harker.
Yes.
Thank you for your patience.
I went and had snacks. It's all about the food. Stephanie Harker, City of West Hollywood. You've heard me speak about this before, and I wanted to mention several things this evening. First of all, I was in contact with Councilmember John Erickson, who asked me, or said he'd like to get together with me and find out why I oppose this. Well, therein lies one of the issues. I do not oppose gender neutral bathrooms, but this is, I'll read an email, and I also attended the Transgender Advisory Board on November 2nd, but I feel that some of these meetings have been brought about because of this letter that I wrote to Councilmember Erickson. Dear John, here's the truth. I am not opposed to gender neutral bathrooms. That does appear to be the rumor, however, and in fact, the latest gossip has some uninformed people accusing me of being transphobic, which couldn't be further from the truth. My concern is, and always has been, safety in general and specifically at Plummer Park in the enclosed restrooms inside the community center. My concerns and fears are the most serious for women, particularly trans women, elderly women, and children, both straight and transgender. If bathrooms are designed with floor-to-ceiling doors that can be locked, it is asking for trouble, crimes of opportunity. The public outreach on this has not been the greatest. It needs to be far more reaching before plans are made. When discussed at Public Safety Commission meetings at the beginning of this year, there were only a few members of the public in attendance. The plans were already well underway. The drawings were presented at that early time. Hopefully, staff, and I believe this has happened, will reach out to the transgender seniors, the lesbian and gay seniors, the disability advisory boards, and then do a focus group of the actual users of Plummer Park restrooms to include those who frequent the senior lounge, those working at JFS office, and especially teachers at the preschool and parents of the preschoolers and of the teen centers. When I spoke at the Transgender Advisory Board, I encouraged them to come forward and speak on this, not just at their advisory board. I'm surprised that the research didn't start with the members of that community and that it's gone all these other places before. I might run a little over here. I feel that this can't be one size fits all, that a public bathroom an enclosed public bathroom in Plummer Park is different than a new high-end hotel or a bar or a restaurant that's going to be required to build these. And there's been a great emphasis on the opposition to this because of safety at Plummer Park. We're not changing the bathrooms here in this hall. We didn't put transgender neutral bathrooms in the new ARC building. So it seems awkward and odd to concern ourselves with Plummer Park, which has a very high incidence of crime, both prostitution in the bathrooms and drug use and drug sales. So again, I hope that this will be singled out and we, again, not make it one size fits all. I got a lot of agreement from the members of the Trans Advisory Board that safety has to be first. They did do one thing on a transgender bathroom in Plummer Park at the tennis hut where they sawed the bottom of the door off and put a screen over it so that, again, someone could be heard or you can tell how many people are in there by counting the feet. I think that's safe, but the way they have planned it for Plummer Park in the community center right now is not safe. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just curious. Stash has floor-to-ceiling doors, and I would love to know if they've had any incidents there. A revolver? Oh yeah, revolver. I mean, if we have a couple of bars, I would love to see if there's a way we can get feedback. Because again, I know going to Europe a lot, most of the restrooms are floor-to-ceiling doors. That's not unusual. Now, I know we are considering, our trans community and, other specific communities in the city, but I think we have to find a workaround.
Mm-hmm. And there's McDonald's, the Starbucks, there's a lot of them. Whole Foods, all of those.
Okay, any other commissioner comments before we get to our public?
Yes.
Yeah, I understand that's a public comment, but commissioners go first. So was there any other commissioner?
I thought we were doing public comments.
No. Are we good? Are we good? Okay, so,
No, sorry, I have a lot of comments, but we had one person speak public comments. I just think we should finish that if that's okay.
all right, so Lucky Alexander. Thank you for your indulgence.
Good afternoon, commissioners. I am on the Trans Advisory Council, and as a trans person, I'm here to kind of speak on this item. So, one, as a trans person, I am in favor of the multi-stall gender-neutral restrooms. However, I have been in one of the stalls that is floor to ceiling. So, as much as I'm in favor of this, I am also worried about safety when it comes to our folks in the restroom. And so when it comes to folks in the restroom, there being floor to ceiling, there is a chance for violence to happen and no one to hear. On the other side of that, I'm kind of in favor and not in favor at the same time, because I know what that looks like as a trans person. I have been assaulted in a restroom due to being trans. So I am fully in favor of this, but I'm also in favor of safety. So if there's a way that safety can also be a workaround within this plan, I'm 100% about it, but I'm also 100% about making sure that we're safe. I have children, so I understand what other speakers are speaking of, and something that one of the other speakers spoke earlier around someone getting locked in or someone having to go in and get them. I'm worried because, again, I have children. I have a 6-year-old, and if she goes into a restroom and gets locked in and we can't hear her, I would be worried. But again, I am in support of this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Secretary, do we have another public comment on this issue?
Yes, we have one more. Kathy Blavis.
Hi, good evening. Kathy Blavis, City of West Hollywood. Again, this is the Public Safety Commission, so anyone speaking tonight ideally is speaking about the idea of however this goes, whichever way it works, that it's safe. And I'm just suggesting that maybe we reach out to other cities, other areas that have already been through this. I know, for example, in Santa Monica at their public park, it's all outdoors. Theirs is wide open. There's no doors in terms of access. I think it's the Tongva Park. So, maybe just looking to other areas that have already done this to see what works best. We all have a good idea that maybe floor to ceiling, full doors don't work. So I would just recommend that to see if you can't reach out to other areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Secretary, any more comments, public comments? I don't see any.
No more public comments in chambers.
Okay, all right, commissioners. Apologies for the confusion, but does anyone have anything they would like to add? Vice Chair Balbone.
So I just want to go on record for saying that one of the reasons that I got involved in the city of West Hollywood is the ability for people to work through problems like this, being supportive and vocal at the same time. I have not heard any member of the community come to this forum and say that they did not support gender-neutral bathrooms. Just haven't heard it. What I have heard is people say, hey, as you do this, you need to be very thoughtful and considerate. So I just want to say that because I think it's really, really, really important. at a time when we're all feeling like we have to pick a side, I'm only hearing one side, which is we want to do this and we want to do it right. So I just want to say that first. And secondly, we also know that we have had issues in Plummer Park. We have had issues of safety for people in those restrooms. And I will recall a time with you and I standing in front of one of those restrooms where someone actually walked up to us, and I remembered this tonight, and asked before they entered the restroom if it was safe. They happened to be a transgender individual. That's something we have to think about. We have to make sure that those bathrooms, if they are floor to ceiling, do not feel isolated. And in a park where there aren't eyes on them 100%, it's not the same as a business establishment. There is an opportunity for someone to get in there, to get into trouble, and have nobody who checks on them until something really bad has happened to them, either because there's somebody in there with them or because there's been a substance use issue. So I'm a big proponent of figuring out how we deal with the doors, and I think we have to do that because we're hearing feedback from people who are thoughtful and supportive of this process. So that's my opinion on it, and I think we've got it from the Planning Commission, from this commission, and other commissions that the floor-to-ceiling doors, you know, maybe we don't need to say in private establishments, but in our public parks, that needs to be a consideration. Thank you.
Commissioner Seal.
Thank you, Chair. I think that, first of all, Stephanie, no, I've never heard your name come up in terms of transphobia, and that stuff usually hits me very quickly in terms of actual transphobic incidents in the city. So just so you know, I've never heard that in relation to your name. I think there exists, when transgender, and this goes back so much further than this, and that's why I appreciate the folks from HRC and the LGBT Center coming in. When this first came up, when we talked about transgender bathrooms and gender-neutral bathrooms and people being able to access in the bathrooms that they identify with, you know, immediately there were cries of assault. There were cries, not outcries. I mean, women are going to get assaulted. Folks are going to get assaulted. The data just doesn't support it. And so I think when we hear people, you can be supportive of it and still say, I'm worried about assault. And that some of that comes from that earlier stuff. And so it's not as easy to say that everyone's supportive and it's not transphobic, unless you understand the areas within which this is transphobic and those elements. I'm not saying anyone here is. I'm not saying that's the intention. I'm saying unless you're engaged in the community enough to understand the deep-rooted reasons why some of those cries are actually transphobic because they were used to keep trans folks out of bathrooms in the first place, it's a little bit of a deeper dive than kind of, you know, that, and that's a longer conversation than right now. I also think we're hearing from community, we're hearing from a small amount of community here. I am a resident. I have gone to establishments in this city for years that already have this in place, where I don't feel a safety risk. I don't have a concern. I've invited the members of the public at the last meeting through Facebook outreach to join me and said I would escort them. Not one of those folks with concerns has followed up and said, yes, I'd like to go see one of these nightlife establishment gender neutral bathrooms. So if you're not willing to take that step, I don't know what your commitment to that is when I've offered my personal time to do so or offered you the names of establishments to go view. My understanding for this item is that this is for new establishments, privately held establishments, and establishments that undergo over a 50% renovation. Is that correct?
That is correct, Commissioner Still.
So would this affect Plummer Park in the inside? I just want to understand so that I have it right, so that we're all talking about the same thing here. Would this affect Plummer Park in terms of whatever forthcoming renovations are coming, or what is the dialogue around Plummer Park that I'm missing because the outdoor bathrooms are completed?
Yeah, so my understanding is, Plummer Park obviously is not a commercial establishment, so it wouldn't be, wouldn't fall under the proposed ordinance. So essentially, though, the city could make potential changes in the future, but what those changes and kind of what that looks like, that I'm not certain of.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to clarify that for this commission because we're talking about privately held establishments that are new or undergoing over 50% renovation. So we're getting into a dialogue about parks, but this is not about parks.
So the one thing that we may want to triangulate is when there were issues at Plummer Park, there was a request to redesign those bathrooms because of what was happening.
Mhm.
And I think there's two conversations that are getting converged.
Mhm.
And I think that what we may be hearing is concern, particularly about that park, that if there was a redesign, the exact issue we've seen, which is the fact that those bathrooms can be isolating, would not be addressed. So I think
Mhm.
that might be what's happening.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because there was a request, because of all the issues in the park, to redesign those bathrooms, and that goes back a couple of years.
I found my notes, and I have a total detailed from every meeting we had all about those bathrooms on July 8th, 2019, 8/12/2019. I have the letters, July 27th. I have the solutions proposed. Steve Campbell, everything they did. Edward Ramirez, everything that they did. I have feedback in emails from the people who were at that meeting and what happened, how fast it turned around, and their responses. I got it up until August 12th. I have every detail of this, and I would, through the person who appointed me, Mayor Meister, I would make this available to her, and it's a lot. It's several pages. I kept a total track of this to make it available to City Council as well as us. But my thing is, and we can tell exactly what happened because they turned that around fast. That's why I took all of these notes, because Mayor Meister wanted me to really be on top of this one. And so the thing is I'm really glad of is lucky, Alexander, you came, because I would like to talk with Shane and those other people. How would you feel in this kind of community central area where there's the sinks, and then you have these ceiling to floor doors? If you were a trans person in there, and there could be somebody from another state or whatever that hates trans people, they could shove you in that door and close it and nobody would know you're in there. And that's can happen. And I would like the focus not to be on gender neutral bathrooms. I would like to say that we can be a beacon for the safest bathrooms. If we're going to mandate anybody to have bathrooms, I think that would justify the safeness of a bathroom. And that would consider things like people who are doing drugs in there. How do we know they're not dead in there? How do we know somebody's not getting raped in there? How do we know somebody didn't get shoved in, a kid or something like this, into those bathrooms? Let's talk to those people who, I've had people contact me since this came on, residents who have been raped. They says, I don't want to speak about it publicly at all. They're scared to death of these. They don't want to go in them. They feel totally unsafe. They're scared of them. So why can't we put the safest bathrooms and say, why don't you want a safe bathroom that the bottom of the door is cut off? Is that the bathroom is for just getting in there and doing business? It's not anything else. You can spend all your time doing your makeup or whatever you want to do out in the air, the common area. But the bathroom is just to go into that bathroom. We don't know what kind of prostitution may be going on in those bathrooms. All of those things need to be looked at. And we could be an example of the safest bathrooms. I think the focus should be on the safety. How can we make these preventative of all possible problems and look at the vulnerabilities? How do you get somebody out if they stay in there? And you can still see their feet. What if you see them laying on the ground? And there's got to be ways that people have already figured out in other states that we can really look at. But I think the focus should be, from our Public Safety Commission, the safest bathrooms in the nation that everybody else can follow.
I don't think that anyone here isn't concerned about safety. So again, I'm very cautious of language. I don't think that no one here is concerned about safety. I'm certainly concerned about safety. I have worked with Shane on Shane's assault case, as Lucky will tell you. We just met with the sheriff again since the beginning, so I don't need that information. In fact, what we need to know is why, when a sexual assault occurred in a bathroom before this, was nothing done, right? We're splitting the dialogue in this conversation to kind of fit the narrative, and that's not the reality of the assault cases that we have on record in this city that have not been followed up on. So again, I always get concerned about that kind of switch or segue into conversation, because we can't do that without having the fullness of conversation of the bathrooms that we currently have in this city not being safe for people to use before this goes into play. The other piece of that is these establishments are all responsible for their safety. So if we're talking about nightlife, there shouldn't be children in these bars. I think so many things are getting tossed into this item conversation. And also, we shouldn't be talking to one or two. Everybody should have their voice heard. Let me be clear on what I'm trying to say. There is every transgender organization in the country, every leader in the country is supportive of these efforts. There is study after study. The LGBT Center co-sponsored the bill. I would look to them. We just spoke earlier about the importance of working with LGBT Center and trusting them in their leadership and their work with the trans community and all of our community. They sponsored this bill. They are a party to that. The representative from the LGBT Center was here tonight to speak about the importance and kind of also debunk the sexual assault cry out. We have all of those safety issues to cover. If you go to any of the gender neutral bathrooms that already exist in this city, I would ask folks to go do that and see if it feels unsafe. But regardless, our task here is to come up with our feedback and give it to council so everybody can
Are you
lodge their
arguing
feedback.
that you want floor to ceiling?
Yeah.
Okay, is that safer than one that's cut off at the bottom where you can see their feet?
I think I'm not 100% on this, so I would ask for clarity. I think when you get into the space under, you then have to have an outside door. And so part of the concern we had was, because otherwise now it's open, right? So like, you don't have coverage from the rest of the business, and so you have to have an enclosed bathroom space. There has to be another door for security. That's my understanding of why the floor to ceiling versus, not.
So if you ask, you can tell all of these people who are afraid to go in those floor to ceiling bathrooms, you shouldn't be afraid because the statistics show that you're not going to get hurt. They still feel afraid. They feel safer in a bathroom where somebody could catch if somebody shoved them in that bathroom, or if a guy was dying who overdosed on drugs, or there's two people in that stall. I want to hear arguments against the safety. Which one is safer? You're arguing that it's safer to have floor to ceiling?
So
I have a suggestion. Is there a way that we can make a recommendation that an emergency panic button is placed in the restrooms, especially in our public facilities, the parks? Is that a compromise?
Well, Chair, if I may, I think making a recommendation like that and with the consensus of the commission is exactly what this discussion should be about, right? And so if that's something that you want the city council to consider, then we can communicate that, as the liaison to the commission, to the planning and development services staff that are going to be taking the item to the city council next month. So I think those are really the things that staff from planning and development services looking to get out of, making the rounds to the different commissions and advisory boards, is getting ideas to help mitigate some of the concerns, to Commissioner Berger's point, that are being brought to the attention of the commission from a safety perspective.
So commissioners, how do you feel about adding an emergency panic button or call button in the restrooms? I mean, they are in hospital restrooms, and that could be a solution.
I'm going to make a delineation for me that I think is important. The first gender-neutral restroom I ever used was in MoMA, Museum of Modern Art in New York City. And that goes back 15 to 20 years ago. It's a heavily trafficked area. The stalls are floor to ceiling, but it's open. And you generally feel safe. In an establishment that is a restaurant and a heavily trafficked area, I have no problem personally with floor to ceiling. Where I have a problem is a park that is not heavily trafficked or patrolled, a civic building that is not heavily trafficked or patrolled, a place that is open to the public in general where there could be predatory behavior of any type for any person. That, I don't know that a panic button would help, because if someone gets you and overpowers you and no one else is around and locks you in, you're done. They're not gonna let you hit the button either. So to me, there's a delineation between restaurants and social gathering places and civic buildings and parks. They're very different and they're set up differently, and the access people could have are different. In my mind, it's just different. And if we can, from our commission, agree that there are those differences, I'd feel comfortable with that. That's, when we talk about kids, I agree. A kid's not going to be in a nightlife establishment, generally speaking. If they walk into a restaurant where everyone can see and there's a floor-to-ceiling, that's less of a worry. If they're in a park and wander off and someone throws them in a bathroom, that's a problem. So that's just me. I'm making a stark contrast between the two.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So, Commissioners, what will our recommendation be? We seem to be split on
I'm going to
this.
stay split because I want the safest bathrooms for every location. We're the Public Safety Commission. There's going to be almost no chance of problems when you have the bottoms cut off, regardless of the location. I don't want to see one time in a location that we says, no, let's go ahead, that's fine, and then we find out somebody gets raped or killed or something in there. There's no reason, as from a safety standpoint, that we need the top to bottom. So I want to stay with what I want to recommend, that we look into that and make them even safer than, that's probably not even just the solution. I want to make the very safest bathrooms in the nation, and for us to be an example.
All right, so where do we go from here? Director Rivas.
Yeah, so, the commission can certainly has stated on the record their comments from individual perspectives, so, we can essentially consolidate all of those and add those as additional input, and make mention that, we had a commissioner, right, voice concerns regarding A, B, and C. So if that makes sense, because that's kind of like what I'm hearing from the commission.
One last thing that I want to say is our bathrooms aren't safe now. They're not safe now. And we know that. So while I agree with the sentiments to make them safer, we've got floor-to-ceiling issues in Plummer Park today that people have wanted changed, and that's how we're getting wrapped around this conversation. And in our nightlife establishments where we do have people who want to be able to go to the bathroom and feel safe, they don't feel safe. So we have to deal with that. That's the reality that we've got. And to me, I do now understand what your question was. How did we get crossed? We got crossed because we have an existing problem in the park that has not been dealt with yet. And now we have the gender-neutral bathrooms that we don't want to see that problem not get resolved because of this requirement. So that's where we are. And to me, our bathrooms are unsafe now. So we've got to do something, period, especially in our nightlife establishments, because they are not safe.
Okay, are we good to move on since staff has our notes? Okay, so if I'm correct, we're circling back to item 8E, nighttime safety study session. So on the agenda, the nighttime safety study session debrief from the August 22nd special meeting, which you were at, correct, Commissioner Steele and Commissioner or Vice Chair Balbone. So do you have any comments?
I'm going to go. You want to go first?
Whichever. What do you prefer?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So thank you for the very thoughtful, very diligent list of items. I think they are good. I would like to compel our commission to take a couple of these and ask in the same way we did with pickpocketing that they move forward with momentum and timeframes, because this is a very long list that could have us doing all or none of these things, and we've been talking about this for a very long time. A couple of the thoughts that I have is, we know, based on the reports, October, there's a high propensity of rape. We know that June, we've also seen in the past, and those happen to be very festive times in our community where people are drinking and celebrating, and there are some people who are preying on those people. I'd like to make sure that we have training around those holidays and events. I'd like to make sure that our drink testing kits are distributed before those events, that we have more consistent communication about those events, and that we ensure that I will defer to my colleague on several of the other initiatives, but to me, those things are important. And the last thing that I do not see us resolving is the gap in communication when somebody is found passed out or raped around whether or not their drink was spiked and how we get them into testing for that. That is still a gap. They go to Cedars, they're not going to get tested. So it's still a lack of clarity, and we know this is happening at times. So I would like to make sure we have a definitive plan around that in addition to getting very specific. So those are my thoughts.
Commissioner Steele.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Vice Chair. I think some of the concern that I have, some of the things I'm seeing in here don't contain kind of the fullness of the dialogue from that meeting, and so, for example, I'm a little concerned about number 7, where it says interested in victim advocacy, communications, and marketing around those issues. And so it looks like a response as a solved concern as opposed to the starting point of a dialogue, right? So it says, to date, the city has utilized standard communication channels, news releases, social media posts. What it reads to me as, I don't know what you're all reading is, we're good here, but nothing has changed between that meeting and this, and that was intended to be the starting point of a dialogue. And I think in terms of the communication and wraparound services, and I can share because I have permission from Shane in our recent meeting about the sexual assault, as it relates to life safety, we talked a lot about the wraparound services and the lack of communication and access around wraparound services, right? And again, it goes back to who do you call, what are your steps, what happens? And so getting the communication piece together, that's in number 7 here, is extremely important. And I started to voice this earlier, and thank you, Chair, for encouraging me to hold it for here, because it really is more applicable here. But the drink spiking strips is a perfect example. We waited for months and months and months to get updates. We were told it'll be coming at a certain time. It didn't come at that time. We asked, we volunteered, we said we would hand out and distribute these kits as we did the first time, and we were told, we'll let you know. I was told we have to invite everybody to do this together because that's the right way, as if this is a process in writing, which it isn't, right? Someone's making that call, and instead what happens, it gets pushed off another month. And my concern was we're going into October, which is a very high-trafficked month for our bar and nightlife establishments, and these aren't out there, and they could be. I could go do this in an afternoon, myself and other commissioners, anybody that wants to do it, and folks were willing to do it and made it very clear, and instead we were pushed back And they didn't, they made it out very, very late, just prior to Halloween. And that's really not enough time to create a proper dialogue. And I want to give a comparison for context. When the chamber announced their Halloween programming, as I started to mention earlier, and I was thrilled about it as it's super important for our business community, I reached out to the head of the chamber on a Thursday evening and said I was thrilled about it. I'd love to support. I'd be willing to distribute any materials. However, I can get the word out that this programming is happening. And they wrote back the next morning and said, we so appreciate you willing to spend your time. Please come do that. I went, I got it, and that afternoon, evening, I went to maybe 16, 17 establishments, and all of them had the materials because I know that's how fast it can happen. That's how easy it is to do. So to be gatekept that way and to have staff say to us, oh, no, I don't know who's making these decisions or why, but I've said repeatedly, we have an assault crisis concern. We have fear. We have things we're not addressing. Why wouldn't you want this out there as fast as possible? And we still had no communications about it. We still had no marketing around it. I was told that the marketing around the initial release was good enough. People aren't following a press release or a 30-second news clip featuring West Hollywood folks. We need to be reaching people where they're at, which is in nightlife, and that was a big part of that dialogue. It's a big part of what community has been asking for, and it was really beyond disappointing to see that type of red tape hold us back from keeping people safe immediately. So we're having these safety conversations. We're talking about this. Here's a perfect example. I emailed the mayor. I emailed every single council member. I emailed the city manager. I emailed everybody repeatedly about this. And so all of these folks that are so concerned about safety and assault in our restrooms did not respond to me. They did not work on the issue. They did not take a stand or even just simply say, hey, staff, why isn't this moving forward? So again, when we see it on one issue that looks like a hot button issue, but we don't see it actualized in real time when they could instantly get something done that would prevent sexual assault, it's very disappointing. And it does make me take pause at the things that are high concern for these folks when real-time solutions that we look for in so many times that we can't find them are there, and yet they're sat on for red tape and whatever kind of bureaucratic nonsense in this size of a city is outrageous. So I'm a little concerned about some of the wording. I'm concerned about not having a more robust plan for dialogue around these issues, and I think that the way that meeting was formatted can't happen again. It was run like a council meeting. That was one of our concerns going in. We wanted to be able to have community dialogue, which we see the power of, we see it's important, and instead it turned into another council meeting. Council ran it. It was a very long time before the rest of us even got to give opinions or share information, and there were things they were asking on and asking staff to do that we've had in the works for a very long time, and we just could have trimmed the fat.
And not to interrupt you, but I was at that meeting, and I was disappointed because I felt it turned into a council meeting. We had commissioners there and advisory board members that had very little time to contribute. So I think that's a problem. Director Rivas, with the drink spike testing strips, are they handed out for free at bars, or do we know?
Yes. So to answer your question, they are. The city has contracted through our social services division a contractor that essentially goes out every weekend and distributes them to different establishments. And if an establishment reaches out as well, then they obviously will make contact with them, but they're doing their canvassing, if you will, on kind of a systematic basis. They started off on the west side of the city, and my understanding is they're going to be working their way throughout the rest of the areas of the city. I know they did provide a report in October in terms of how many nightlife establishments that they had visited already. So that will continue. That's a part of their contract to provide drink spiking test strips.
Okay, but do the bars have them, like, for example, the Abbey, Mickey's, the larger establishments all have security? that checks ID before you enter. So wouldn't it be beneficial if these individuals had these test strips to hand out as well as people are entering the premises?
Yeah, so a part of their outreach is, as I mentioned, they started off on the west side of the city, so that included the Rainbow District specifically, and so that began last month. And so with that outreach, it did provide that establishment, meaning their management staff, with a number of drink test strips, right? So in terms of whether management of the businesses are having their security staff provide that at the front door when they're checking ID, that I don't know, but they are informed. I can tell you all the businesses that are in that area have been communicated about the
program. It just seems to make sense to me because you want to approach people when hopefully they're somewhat sober before they get into an establishment and start drinking, and they just aren't aware of all of the different things. Any other commissioner comments?
Vice Chair Balbone is exactly right on. I liked your 2 points. Very simple. Both of those are excellent. Keeley Fields was excellent. She just simplified everything down to the test strips. Really, that's basically all, because we can't catch the people otherwise. I think unleashing, somehow galvanizing the community so there's not this feeling of frustration. You're 100% right, Commissioner Steele. We all feel like, why are things taking so long? But the people that are motivated like that, can we galvanize the community to say, this is community safety? Can we go out ourselves and stand out in front of the club? Hey, welcome to West Hollywood. I live in this city. We just want you to be safe. And this is these test strips. I think we're going to have to hit people a lot of times before it gets into their head that, hey, wait a minute, I can use this test strip. Because it's just general human nature that they think it'll never happen to me, especially when they're not sober later on. So maybe this is a key component of somehow galvanizing the community and making it so they can get out and participate in the safety part.
I agree. I think the community is galvanized. Keely and I asked repeatedly to be able to do that. I've got nightlife connections for decades in this city. And when I said it for the chamber, they said yes, and it was done the next day. Done. So yes, I agree, but we need to find out why there's such gatekeeping around doing that. These are commissioners that serve. These are board members that serve. We're here for a reason. We're super connected to the city. We're also, some of us, super connected to the nightlife community and understand engagement there in that way. Why the gatekeeping? Why are we being told no? Why are we being told to wait? Why are we not being kept up to speed and informed on it? I'll never understand why we waited 2 months to get them back out. And they're out now, and I think it's great, but it's unacceptable to wait 2 months to prevent something that's preventable.
So I'd like to make a recommendation, and I'm just going to start to riff, and if anybody wants to add on, please do. This is a laundry list of all of the things we'd ever consider, and it goes into a lot of territory that is not specific around the issue we were trying to address. All relevant, but not for this topic. I'd like to suggest that some of the positive things that have happened, like the rape treatment center training that the sheriffs and Block by Block are having, continues, and it's at least annual and includes all of their staff. Number one. Number two, that the test strips are distributed no less than 6 times a year with a specific focus around Pride and Halloween, definitively, and we could pick the other times of the year. I would also like to make sure that we have some formal investment in advocacy. We talked tonight about following up with our local bars and being concerned about their needs. We have victims who have not gotten resolution And nobody's talking about that. And I think we really do need to make sure that we are doing everything to advocate for those people and their wellness, and where we can, justice for them. So those are the things that I would like called out into a memo that goes back to the city and city council and asks for resolve on a couple of these items. The rest we can probably approach other ways, but there might be others, so.
I like that, and I agree. I've certainly continued to talk about the fact that we're not addressing any of these issues with our current, survivors and folks. I propose that we have a nightlife and sexual assault task force. I think it's way too big of a dialogue. I also didn't think it exists in one body. This is a public safety commission. But you've got the Transgender Advisory Board, you've got the LGBTQ plus board, you've got the Women's Board, you've got the Disability Advisory Board. These topics affect many people, and there's different perspectives. And I think the Social Justice Task Force as well, who I know has touched on some of these pieces in their ongoing work, but I think it needs to be a bigger picture conversation that can't be done in this meeting or one of those meetings. I think we need a sexual assault and nightlife safety task force to address these issues, and that I think might help with some of the issues with staff and with a little bit of that going, wait a minute, there's a commission that we need to work with, or not a commission, excuse me, a body we need to work with on these issues and have ongoing transparent dialogue with.
I think we could add that to the recommendation, and that, maybe we recommend that that commission or that task force meets at least 2 to 4 times a year, at least, but that they set their charge.
Can't we have like what happened last time where it was not a specific task force? We have members like you guys came. That kind of a dialogue was fantastic. And the same with the pickpocketing one, that forum, the way that was laid out, we got so much, the people who participated got more done than we get done in 5 meetings. That kind of a thing where it's just 2 people from our commission, 2 people from this, how we did last time. But I'm in agreement 100% with Vice Chair Balbone. I love the exacting specifics of at least 6 times a year. I love those kinds of very clear what we are recommending. Any more of those kinds of things that are very distinct, I'm all for.
So, commissioners, are we in agreement with Vice Chair Balbone, and we want to make said amendments?
If we can add the task force, I like how it came to fruition, and I like those folks being at the table, so I agree with that piece. However, if by doing it that way, it needs to have council present the way that it did, then I'm not for that. Because of how council dominated the meeting, it turns into something other than community voice, and community voice is too important. So I would propose it as a task force of its own body, and that way they have the autonomy to do what they're there to do. But I do think different people from different bodies would be great.
Could I amend that to not specifically a task force, some sort of meeting, and then it can be determined how that comes about, whether it's we send 2 people, another, like the way you guys did it. Mm-hmm. Leave that a little bit more open but somehow at least meeting how often? 2 times a year?
I think 4 to 6, I would agree, yeah.
What would you see?
I kind of feel that a task force is the way to go, because that particular meeting, I left very disappointed.
Same.
Because I didn't get the opportunity to hear from commissioners, any of the advisory board members that were there. It was a city council meeting.
Yeah.
And we know who we have to make the recommendations to. I mean,
right.
We all know that. And I think giving that group the ability to work through it and figure out 4 times a year what things we need to surface next and what's working and what's not is important. We've started a dialogue. I think we've got some good bones, but we need to keep doing this because this is not solved, and we're not making as much progress as we need to.
Okay.
So do you want me to restate?
Yes, please, Vice Chair.
So we want to make the recommendation on this topic that the Rape Treatment Center training continues for block by block and for the sheriff's department, and that's at least annual for all of their staff. We want to make sure that we convene, well, I'll go in order that I originally said. We want the test strips distributed no less than 6 times a year, highlighting the preparation for Pride and for Thanksgiving, for Halloween. I'm going to go out of order in this next one. We want a task force convened that will meet at least 4 times a year, that is cross-pollinated by representation from multiple advisory boards and commissions. And we'll have to figure out how we do that. And I think the city attorney can help with that if it's a barrier, but we need that. And then the last thing is, I would like to recommend that we suggest that that task force starts with improving victim advocacy and support services.
So just 2 things, Vice Chair. So on the rape treatment center training, you mentioned all other staff. Who are you referring to in that?
You know, all other, I don't know if we may hire someone else to do security at some point, but if we had somebody else doing security for us, we know we've got block by block in the sheriffs, but anybody else who's doing any type of public safety for us.
Okay. And yes, there are challenges and obstacles to having a joint subcommittee. I believe that may have been communicated to the representatives that participated in the study session. And so the idea of having representatives, Commissioner Berger, as you mentioned, and Vice Chair, I know you just mentioned that in terms of working with the city attorney, but I can definitely tell you that there's going to be an issue with that. And if that hasn't been communicated with you all, then I'll be sure to circle back with the folks that kind of help coordinate with that and get you guys a response. But that was kind of the reason why the meeting was set the way that it was. And it did include city council, but the idea of maybe having or considering your recommendation in terms of establishing a social justice task force, but a nightlife safety or sexual assault task force, then that task force would essentially, if city council, the will of city council would essentially select, right, and appoint people that are not already advisory board members, are not already commissioners that would participate in that, similar to the social justice task force, right? None of those individuals that were sitting on that body were a part of any other commission or advisory board, but having representatives from each commission or advisory board, that's where it poses that challenge.
Or if it was a study session rather than an ongoing standing committee, which requires the Brown Act and all of that, you may not be able to say it's got to be exactly this. So it's not ongoing, so legally you can do it with something kind of more informal like study sessions.
Yeah, and I'm happy to include what you just mentioned. I'm just giving you just background.
Where there's a will, there's a way, and what I would say is what we did didn't work. And I think that you're hearing feedback from 2 people who attended. I don't know that we would hear different feedback from others who attended, because unfortunately it just became another meeting where our lovely council members who are well-intended came and gave us their point of view, which is important, but I don't think that's what that meeting was for. And I think we need a different approach. So however we can make it work would be fantastic.
Got it.
And I agree with Vice Chair Balbone. As I said, I left that meeting with more questions than answers. So, all right. So, commissioners, are we good to move on?
Take a vote or anything on that, or
do we have to take a vote?
It seems like there's consensus, right? All commissioners on no. Yeah.
And before we move on, are there any public comments, Commissioner Secretary, on this item?
No public comments in chambers.
Okay. So moving on, item 8G, request, tracking, and commission calendar. Commissioners, do you wish to speak on this? We are to discuss previous requests and review the upcoming schedule of agenda.
If I can, I actually would like to talk about the calendar because that's an important one. I know I sent an email out. Our next two Public Safety Commission meetings pose some challenges, and so I know we don't have the entire commission, but we certainly have enough commissioners here to make a decision in terms of moving forward. So I did send an email out concerning our next commission date of December 12th. So December 12th is also the same evening that our city attorney's office, along with our city clerk's office, would like to provide the annual ethics training. I think some commissioners that have served on the commission have obviously gone through that training more so than others, but it is something that they typically schedule every year. They typically host it here in the city council chambers. That hasn't been done in the past just because of COVID and the restrictions, right, that have been in place. So this is ideally kind of the first year that we did pre-COVID where we would have meetings here in the council chambers. So there is an online option to complete the ethics training as well. But again, going back to the December 12th, that's the same evening that we have our Public Safety Commission. And what poses a challenge is if we did decide to have another date that the commission wished to have the meeting, you know, if we were not here in the council chambers, then we would have to do it and try to find another room. And the meeting would not be broadcast like it is this evening. You know, because this is really the only room that's capable of having broadcasts, which is the reason why we transitioned over from Plummer Park here to the council chambers. So just throwing that out there, you know, my suggestion in my email, of course, it was merely a suggestion, was to not have the Public Safety Commission meeting for December, just given the fact that we're going to have, as I look at the other Mondays in December, we have December 5th, which is the first Monday. That's a city council meeting, which will be the last meeting for most of the council members that are outgoing. And then the 21st, which is our third Monday, is you know, our incoming council members will have their oath of office and we'll be getting started with business. That meeting, as I mentioned a couple of times throughout the commission meeting this evening, is when we will be bringing kind of a more comprehensive overview of community safety and having an in-depth discussion regarding community safety and well-being, as well as kind of the updates, right, from this calendar year in terms of statistical information. So that would be my recommendation, because if we looked at the fourth Monday, that's between Christmas and New Year's. It's the holidays. I know a lot of times people are unavailable to participate during that week. And then the 12th, which is when we were regular scheduled, that's when they're offering the ethics training. So, so that is kind of my spiel, if you will, as it relates to the December meeting. But again, if the will of the commission is to maybe look for another date, it doesn't necessarily have to be a Monday. It can be another day, but keep in mind that Tuesdays, you know, Wednesdays, Thursdays, here in the council chambers, you have other commissions that have meetings, et cetera. And so I would have to, Jessica and I would have to start looking at available dates. You know, that you all would be available to meet. We would need at least 4 members of the commission to have a meeting. So I want to start with December, and then we'll get into January after.
I have a question. This room is not available because the Public Safety Commission meeting is held in December. Why don't they change their date? Because this is the only time, once a month, that the public can come and speak about their safety concerns publicly. I think we take priority, and why would they even consider our date? Because it's already taken, it's occupied. Can you take it back to them and say you can't take that date? It's already occupied by the Public Safety Commission.
Yeah, so the reason why they chose that date is the city attorney has to be involved because the city attorney provides that training. So our city attorney, looking at the December 5th and looking at the December 21st city council meetings, the city attorney is present during those meetings, right? So they had to look at the 12th, and then they had to look at the 4th Monday, which again, going back to the holidays, that date just didn't seem feasible. So I can certainly ask Commissioner Berger.
Don't they have the whole year to do their meeting with this? I mean, why is there a rush to get it done only in December, or?
And wouldn't we have to potentially, here's my question. If we are going to have new commissioners coming in, probably in January, it probably doesn't make sense to do this training in December because most of them are going to need it again because we're going to have new commissioners. So the timing of this seems strange, number one. And number two, my other question would be, do they have to be in here? Because does it have to be broadcast? I don't think it has to be broadcast. Does it?
So those are all questions that I can't respond to, but that I can certainly follow up with.
Yeah, it
the
just
city
seems
clerk's
out of
office
whack
and see.
because if we know we have new council members coming in, we will probably have new commissioners. And for us, we know we'll at least have one seat open because Nika is no longer here. So those people will have to go through that training. So doing it in December when we've got an outbound class of commissioners and advisory board members doesn't make a lot of sense. It should probably be January or later.
Yeah, so again, I can't speak to the background in terms of why the date was chosen. Community Safety Department is not hosting this ethics training.
Above your pay grade, right?
It's not that it's above my pay grade, it's just that, again, our department is not the one that's scheduling the training. So I will work with the other department and ask those questions. So it sounds like the commission wants to hold by consensus of everybody the December 12th date. And if this room is not available, because it's going to be a pretty quick turnaround for us as staff to start looking for another room. That is the will of the commission in terms of having a meeting somewhere else, right? Even if it isn't broadcast.
I think we need to have the meeting. Our calendar dates were set. And now they're trying to top our date with this training. And I think our public safety meetings are very important. So somehow there has to be a compromise. We have to, I think, figure this out for December. So I think we are all in agreement. We would like to have our meeting, Director Rivas.
Okay, so, which is fine. And like, I just want to ask again, so we will start looking for other days, locations that are available for that specific date on the 12th. So the Public Safety Commission will be having a meeting, is what I'm hearing, if this room is not available, and you all will be completing your training online, the ethics training that they're asking, that they sent an email out to all the commissioners and advisory boards. And so I'll start looking for another location if council chambers is not available, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you, and good luck with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to January, that was just December. So January 9th is the second Monday, which is our regular scheduled commission meeting day. However, because the first week in January with New Year's, city council meeting is not occurring, and the city council has already adopted to set the schedule for next year, which will include making their city council meeting instead of that first Monday on the second and fourth Monday, because not only do you have New Year's, you also have Martin Luther King holiday as well in January. So because they have moved now their meetings to the 2nd and 4th in January. That is January 9th. And so City Council does take priority over the Public Safety Commission in terms of that evening's meeting. So I, again, will ask the same question. we can obviously not have the Public Safety Commission meeting the same evening that the City Council meeting is, but we would have to look at another date that's feasible for all of the commission. If the council chambers, again, is not available, then I would have to look for another location. Again, if it's another location, our meeting will not be broadcast, so just putting that out there. But that's going to be a little more challenging than I think the December date, because I think everybody's set on having the date on the 12th. It just may not be here, but in January we're going to have to move the date of that meeting, whether it's a Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever other days available. So
Can we move it before the council meeting so that they can get whatever discussions or whatever we have?
Are you referring to January?
Yeah, because we can't be in here on the same night as the council.
Well, I think the question is, because of the holiday, there's no date prior to the council meeting that we could meet. We have New Year's.
Correct. So that's a holiday, so we certainly cannot do it on January 2nd.
What about like just a few days before the council meeting? I mean, we're going to have when do the new appointees come in here too? Because that's going to matter as well.
So it all depends on the new council members that are seated. So if we have new council members, which we will, that will be in place on December 21st, technically the council members could start making their appointments then, or they could wait until January to make their appointments, or they could wait until February. So I can't answer that question because I don't know.
I think the term ends in February. So my main thing is we need to have a place for the people to come to the Public Safety Commission, because they only get to come once a month. How do we do it?
So I was opinionated about December because I figured January was going to be harder. So I think January is going to be near to impossible for us to figure out how to meet, just because of the fact that we've got the holiday, the 2 council member meetings, and then we're in February. So I'd just like to push for December and make sure that we get that done. And then if we have to forego our meeting, and there are 2 council meetings in January, that might be the best way to go.
I'm in agreement with that. I think we should really push for December, since January is going to be difficult.
Okay.
We're in agreement?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm here, December's a go on the 12th, regardless of whether it's in the council chambers or not. And then in January, we're good with canceling that meeting for that month.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, are we good to move on to item 8H, Commission Work Plan? Do any commissioners have anything they would like to speak on, or does staff have anything to add?
I do. I think, with the new commissioners that are obviously going to be coming as a part of that, I think we should really tackle and look at February as placing this as an item that we really need to just spend some time into and dive into. I know we have it on the agenda, and it typically is something that we look over. I think a lot of the items, to some of the commissioners' points in the past, have been stuff that's been on there for quite some time. Obviously, it's dated. It needs to be revised and amended, but it might be best to kind of wait until the new commission comes on board to have that discussion.
I would agree. Commissioners, are we in agreement? Okay.
Yeah. So I think if it's okay, we won't add this in December, but we'll definitely add it in February. with an understanding that we should spend some time going over it and setting it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Director
Can
Reeves.
I make one friendly amendment to that?
Sure.
I would find it helpful for commissioners who've been through this process to just give their kind of guidance on what worked and what didn't for, you know, the purposes of the calendar, because I do think there's been some really good progress made, and it might have come through a creative calendaring process, but, you know, I still think that that's valid. So if in December we could maybe put together some thoughts on that, I think it would be helpful.
Absolutely. And we'll add it on for December too.
All right, so we're all in agreement. Moving on to item 9, do we have any new business?
No new business.
Good answer. Items from staff, number 10.
Yeah, so I do have some items, and I'll keep them very brief. These are merely just updates. Wanted to just go over Halloween, because we didn't have a meeting prior to Halloween. Well, we did have a meeting prior to Halloween, but not after, right? This is the meeting that we're having. So overall, Halloween went well. You know, we had public safety personnel that were working from the fire department, sheriff's department, block by block, and code enforcement, working together Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. We did put out some barriers to increase and enhance pedestrian safety on Halloween itself. You know, as I look at from October 28th, which was Friday, to Halloween itself, Saturday was pretty busy. We had probably upwards to about 10,000, 8 to 10,000 visitors just in the Rainbow District area. And then Halloween itself was just as busy. But again, overall, there certainly were some calls that came in, but nothing that fire and emergency services and the sheriff's department wasn't prepared for. And so it was very successful. You know, we are going to be working with our business community in the future to kind of look at Halloween next year. But you know, overall, public safety was well maintained that evening. So I just wanted to make mention of that and thank everybody. I know they've all left, but fire, sheriff, block by block, and code enforcement staff did a great job, and everybody else too internally. I mean, it was a work in progress with our facilities and field services department, event services staff as well helped coordinate the water barriers that we had out. So it was a great collective effort keeping the community safe that evening. You did hear updates regarding the block by block kiosks. So all of the kiosks as a part of the program are up and running. So we have a total of 7 that are currently operating, 2 in our parks. And then we have one on La Brea in Santa Monica. We have one on Robertson in Santa Monica. And then we have one on Melrose and Westbourne by Earth Cafe. And then we've also placed another on Sunset Boulevard and Sunset Plaza, just east of Chin Chin, if you're familiar with the restaurant. So we'll continue to kind of assess those kiosks. If we need to make adjustments, we will, in terms of evaluating the number of contacts that block by block staff are doing outreach to the community on. And I just also wanted to touch on last commission meeting, we had a few community members that expressed difficulty accessing the Zoom platform. And so we did follow up with those community members. And what we ended up learning is that some of the community members were unaware that they did not have the option to click on a Zoom link from their PC or from their smart device, like they used to be able to do a couple of months back to access the meeting, right? And so on our agendas, what we've been doing for a couple of months now is providing the telephone call-in option. And that option is offered through Zoom itself, right? And so for those of us that are familiar with Zoom, which I think we all are, you can call in as well, not just click on the link, right, to access it from your smart device. So that click in, again, option to access a meeting is no longer available, and it hasn't been available for some time now. So what folks do have the ability to do is call in. They dial the number that's on the agenda. There's an operator, an automated operator, right, that prompts you and says, hey, please dial in or press your meeting ID number. And so there's a meeting ID number that's listed on the agenda. They dial that number, they press pound, and then they have access to the meeting because we will see them on the staff side like we did this evening. So that has not changed, but contacting those community members, explaining that, walking them through that process, and even making sure that we did that again today, just to kind of reiterate what we had followed up with them on, was very helpful. And as you can see, we didn't have any issues, but I just want to stress the commission, what we did this evening was actually no different than we did last meeting and what we did the meeting before then. So I know some folks were a little confused again about that option, but that's really what it was. In addition to that, we also made some updates to our Public Safety Commission webpage, and I'm just going to share my screen real briefly, and you can see here, if somebody were to go to the Public Safety Commission webpage, we put an asterisk here that basically says, right, that since the pandemic, we have been meeting at 6 p.m. And so it clarifies, hopefully, for folks when they go to our Public Safety Commission webpage, that they notice that they read that, they see that. It's also mentioning to folks to make sure that they view the current agenda, which is down here for the most up-to-date date, time, and location. So as I click on that, you can see what I was mentioning about our agendas here. Here is to participate by providing public comment by telephone. And here is the dial-in number. Here is the meeting ID. The meeting ID will always be different. The call-in number will always be the same. So whether you're calling in for city council, that number is not going to change. But the meeting ID will be different. And then they press pound, and then we see them on the staff side, right? We see, hey, do you want to admit this phone number? We admit them, they're in, and now they're able to participate, and they can mute and unmute themselves by pressing *6. So I just wanted to mention that to the commission. And so it essentially takes folks maybe 2, the most 3 clicks. If they get a notification on their email through the city's website, they can click on the Public Safety Commission webpage. It takes them to this page that I was just in, and then it says current agenda packet. They click on that, and all the information is there. And obviously, you have all the links and everything else to the staff reports. So that concludes my updates and my comments, and I'm available for any questions the commission might have.
Okay, well, I think this is great because we had discussed there was confusion with residents, our time of meeting, being able to access the meeting. So thank you, Director Rivas. Also, you know, I'm going to pat myself on the back. I fought for over a year for the kiosk at Santa Monica and La Brea. I lobbied every city council member, and it happened, and now the program is being implemented. I mean, Commissioner Berger, Vice Chair, you know, there was even discussion where someone was like, well, can't we move that kiosk and put it somewhere else? And I'm like, no. So I'm glad this is working. I think it's a very important program. Commission Secretary, do we have any public comments?
Sorry about that. Yes, we have one in chambers. Lucky Alexander.
Hello, Commission. Again, I'll make this short. I know you have a long day. I just wanted to clarify some of the comments that I made earlier. One, I was unaware that this wasn't about the park. Vice Chair Balbone, I 100% agree with you. There is a delineation based on location and based on me thinking that it was just the park. My comment stands, but if there is a delineation in location, then that's absolutely a different story. Councilman Berger, I don't find it fair that you used Shane's situation as leverage. Having a door that had a cutoff didn't save him. It didn't change his outcome. That doesn't make it safe. So I think that's unfair.
Okay.
Okay. And that's it for me. I appreciate the work that you all do. I appreciate all the things. I'm also on a board, so I appreciate everything that you all go through and the things that you all hear. But I also, again, want to appreciate Vice Chair. I'm 100% in agreement with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Item 12, we're almost about to cross the line, commissioners. Comments from commissioners. Does anyone have anything additional they would like to share?
I think you guys did a great job, Danny, following up with those individuals. That was extra, going the extra mile. And I don't know if you passed that information on to the other advisory boards as well as the good way that you guys did it, because it's got to be happening with the other advisory boards and commissions as well. But that was a great, nice job.
I will echo those sentiments, and I made a comment tongue-in-cheek that something was above your pay grade. I don't think there should be anything above your pay grade. You do an excellent job, and thank you.
Commissioner Steele?
I disagree with Vice Chair. I'm kidding. I just wanted to, again, thank Danny for the reports. They're fantastic. I'm sorry I missed it at the top, but thank you for that. I know they take a lot of work and a lot of time, so just really appreciate everything you do, and Jessica. Great job, Chair Hallman, on that kiosk. I'm thrilled about it as well, and I think it's really, really important. So I'm glad you did everything you had to do to get that in place, because it is an important location, and it definitely matters. I do want to thank Vice Chair Balbone. I think you, a lot of times, take all of the thoughts that I'm putting out and put them in a very nice package that is digestible. So I just want to thank you for that. And also for the delineation of the parks. I do think it's important, and I think it helps give us all a little bit of balance on the issue. One request, and I know it's difficult with timing, if there's any way to get the meeting agenda sooner, and I know how hard everyone's working, and it's not a critique. I was like checking, and I was checking on Friday, and I set aside time to rally people because I knew we talked about putting this thing on the agenda, and then I didn't on Saturday. I just didn't have an opportunity. And so then yesterday I was like, oh, now I've got to rally people, and I did. And HRC came to speak in the LGBT Center, and I've got a whole host of other people that were like, oh, I could have come to speak on this issue from a data and statistics and assault and crisis standpoint. But I knew it was going to be on, but I wasn't positive because I didn't have the agenda, and I didn't want to sign people up for it. And again, it's all good in the hood. It's fine. It's going to go to council. But if there's any way to get it, even the Friday before would help to rally people, because it gives 3 days to do that. So again, not a critique, and I do appreciate just tossing that out there with hope. And I also did notice earlier the updates on the site, so I wanted to acknowledge that and thank you as well. And that's it. Great meeting, and thanks everyone for the robust dialogue.
Yeah, and I think, our biggest obstacle was Friday was a holiday. So City Hall was closed, and yeah, I agree. Before I adjourn, I want to thank all the commissioners. This is how I think our meetings should run, and I like when we have robust discussions. And that's something that we missed for a very long time. We were so agenda-laden and having to push through items that we didn't get to discuss as a body. And I think it's important because the way the recommendations are being made now to City Council, I just think it's important that we give our input. So thank you, commissioners. And with that said, this meeting is adjourned. Hopefully, we will have a meeting sometime in December to be determined, correct?
Good luck. Thanks, Chair.
you.